Okay, we're live, we're live, we're live.
Arrested in the UK for just things that they've posted on the internet. What a coincidence that this happens first and then that happens next. That actually happens every single time all throughout history, and it makes complete sense. I just want to mention a few things. We got one more video here as Utah is now moving in this direction. Utah Red State, and keep in mind, they're going to say that this is to make things better. It's going to make things easier. Well, we don't want the illegal stuff. I think it could even go in the direction where they say, well, we need a digital ID to be able to do the voter ID, which again, then a lot of Republicans would probably get behind and say, well, we need the voter ID because they're rigging elections. So maybe we need the digital ID. They're going to create it in a way where they create the massive problem, and then they come in with this even worse solution that appears to fix the problem, but in reality is a much bigger problem. Thank you, John W. Appreciate that, man. God bless you. I do want to mention a few things. So this is the last video here. So I want to just, I'll kind of keep an eye on the chat in case anybody mentions something. Theo mentioned something. Do I think that the rapture will happen before Trump gets out of office because the last Trump verse? I don't necessarily think that that's what the whole last Trump thing means. I do believe it's in reference to a trumpet. I think that there could be some foreshadowing in different things that God does. It's interesting how things align like that, but I don't think that that's the case. And again, I'm not even 100% convinced. Honestly, I see 50-50. Again, I don't want to get into a whole rapture thing, but rapture could go either way, in my opinion, where it happens either before, mid, or after the tribulation. It kind of makes sense to me in many different ways. Yeah, I think that was the main.
All right, right on, guys. Look at that.
And just, yeah,
you guys want to go again?
It'd be much easier if we didn't have to pay attention to this stuff and we could just, whatever, enjoy our hobbies and things like that. And we should be doing that too. But we have to keep an eye on this stuff. We have to expose this stuff. Again, just for any of the new listeners who are here now who missed these Bible verses earlier. Nehemiah 4:9. Nevertheless, we made it our prayer to God, and because of them, we set a watch against them day and night. I think that's something that we should do for those who are trying to implement and enforce tyrannical laws in our nation, which, crazy that a small group of terrible, corrupt leaders are making the world to be such a wicked and destructive and where lawlessness is abounding place. Again, these are read 2 Timothy 3 and read the list of these things. These things are just human nature of the sinful nature. And when you read them now, that's exactly where we're at. Maybe we'll do that too before we end off on the stream on this last video here. Psalm 94:16. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? Keep an eye on them and expose them. Here I am, God, send me. That should be our call to this verse here, Ephesians 5:11, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. 2 Timothy 3. Perilous times. I mean, again, this is the human nature. This is the sinful nature. We've seen this throughout history, but it's undeniable that this is where we're at now, and it's moving much faster in this direction. I mean, I know I harp on the Islam thing a lot, but it's really true, and it's very obvious in my opinion. And I think this could really play into many different things. I mean, the book of Revelation says that Christians will be beheaded for their faith in Jesus. What's the one group of people on the face of the earth right now who behead people who are Christians and anybody who doesn't follow their belief system? Well, that's Islam. No one else is doing that. So it could very well fall into that. That is Sharia law. And I saw a video clip the other day of Tucker Carlson laughing and saying, is Sharia law really that bad? It means submission to God. I think that's a better thing. It's a submission to Allah, submission to the Quran, which says that Tucker Carlson should have his hands and feet cut off and him crucified or banished from the land or taxed. That's Quran 533. So there's a lot to that. Insane what some Qatar money will do for you. And that's actually in this verse here. It'll make you turn against the Bible. That's exactly what Tucker Carlson is doing. He's not the man he thought he was. Sad to say. But know this, in the last times, perilous times will come. In the last days, perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, like taking millions of dollars from Qatar and going against what the Bible says. Boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, Traitors,
turn up
headstrong,
the
haughty, lovers
volume.
of pleasure rather than lovers of God.
Enemy soldier incoming.
Again, bro. Again. Oh, the hack. How the hacker got out so fast, bro?
Obedient to parents, unthankful, all this stuff. This is exactly what we're seeing. Something in this verse that I think is important for us to remember too. In my opinion,
got out so fast, bro.
I'm
Oh, get away, bro. I got pissed, bro.
Charismatic Christians abuse these things and they lie and they don't do these, or they're deceived.
To
be
Oh, get away, bro.
With a grip so bold that in secrets live, unyielding might to control destinies concealed from sight.
Got pissed, bro. You a hell of an actor.
Through AI stargates, they blur the line.
that too, huh? That's
Okay,
interesting. I
turn
didn't
it
know that. I have to look that
down.
up. Yeah, I have no problem denying the Talmud. I mentioned earlier the
Whispers of
I mean, someone says here that you know who beheaded many in the French Revolution under Masonry. Look up, the Noahide laws. Yeah, I definitely not in line with that at all. If we're looking, I don't know if history is the best way to go about things, because people could probably say in the Crusades they were doing that too. But in my opinion, what I try to go off is who commands it and who does it now and who's consistently doing it now.
Oh, no, that's not
Over 1 billion Muslims on the earth, and in many nations around the world, just like we're seeing in Nigeria, they are being attacked, hands cut off, heads cut off. They're actually doing it right now. And again, there's I mentioned the whole Israel thing earlier, and how there's a blindness going on for them now, and then they'll come. Some of them will come true too, but not all of them. That's just what it says. That's where we're at. Okay, yeah. So let's take a look at this. Largenson, thanks for that, man. God bless you. And I'm just doing my best to study the things that are happening, study the Bible, and to say what I believe is true, no matter what. No matter what. Even if it's not something that people want to hear. It's just what I believe. And it'd be much easier to get on my stance of anti-Israel stuff, but I don't believe that's what the Bible says. Jesus went against the Pharisees and the ones who were rejecting him and calling out their hypocrisy, and I try to do that. But at the same time, I know there's verses that say they'll see the truth, and that their eyes are personally, their minds and their hearts are hardened, or the fact that we can have the truth of the gospel and the Messiah, Jesus Christ, coming to us. And then even through that, and then Romans 11 says, how much more should we long for them to be brought back into the belief of Jesus and the truth? Because when they do that, how much better everything will be. So I believe that's what we should be aiming for. I pray the same for nobody's too.
Again, bro. Again. Oh, how the hacker got out so fast, bro?
Digital ID, safety and security, big change could be coming to how you prove who you are.
Change could be coming to how you prove who you are. Utah State is considering rolling out a digital ID to help prove who you are in your online dealings. But with data breaches on the rise, Jim Spiewak asked if this could be a game changer for your online safety and security.
Oh, get away, bro.
Christopher Bramwell, Utah's chief privacy officer,
I got pissed, bro. You a hell of an actor.
Whispers of power in the darkness. They say they are. Someone being able to pretend that
To conquer the world.
the whole point of state-endorsed digital identity is to give you control of your identity so nobody can impersonate you. Bramwell sees initial uses for digital identity for things like going through TSA or verifying identity for government services. But he also says demand is growing in the private sector. Why wouldn't you just use an identity you control to log into services?
I'll make it a little
and
bit
you don't have to worry
shorter.
about reset
I
password.
think I gotta make that.
Because
no,
think how
there's no.
easily that can be
Oh, you
hacked.
can't change
Think
it,
about
whatever.
how easily things can be controlled. Doesn't matter if you even never say
Make it
anything on the line or
smaller.
have any belief that goes against the status quo. Do you really want the government looking at every little thing you say and do online. Not only that, but think about, this could get in the creepy direction too, which is what people should be aware of, and another reason why everyone should blow the whistle on it. Think about the NSA and the weirdos who work there, probably some of them, and they have the ability to look into your phone, to listen to what you're saying, to look at your search history, to get into your Ring cameras. There's weird people there who are doing that stuff. I mean, we don't want people to be looking at our stuff, at our videos, at what we say and do online. Even if you do nothing wrong, it's weird.
Grandma says once you receive your credential, the state won't know when you use it, and it won't be tracked, but it would be stored securely in something like a digital vault. What do we tell people about why this will be secure? Security is our top priority, but most importantly, how do you recover when there's a security breach without having to do reissuance of identity to everybody in the state? Utah lawmakers passed Senate Bill 260 this year, which laid the baseline policy that gives individuals the right to digital identity, but not a mandate to opt in. Senator Kirk was the bill's sponsor. Digital now, a lot of what
that
we
does not have nothing to do
even
with
interacting with the state
it.
is. With AI advancing rapidly, Cullimore believes many technologies will soon require state endorsement. Do you feel confident that what is in policy right now as we start to build this out is the most safe and secure? The laws and the parameters to establish its safety and the security and the principles of freedom surrounding that are getting put into place. Jim Spiewak, KUTV2.
Big change.
What happened to
We
the
just saw
audio?
it the other day. AWS, Amazon's internet cloud service, was having issues. They didn't say it was a malicious attack or a hack or anything like that, but it very well could have been. And even if it was, and it just
I think
had
these
problems.
guys were
We had
talking something
Starbucks, Disney
smack.
Plus, banks in the UK, voting or tax government websites in the UK. I mean, so many different companies were affected by that internet going down thing. And it's like, so yeah, do we want all of our information on here? How many times do banks have data breaches? All these things have data breaches, and now they want every single thing onto a digital ID. Again, obviously, them saying that this is to control, to benefit us in any way, to make it better for safer for passwords. Like, you can't memorize your password now; you have to have the state-controlled digital ID because your password's hard to remember. They try to make it sound like that every single time, for safety, to help other people, or it makes things easier. We just don't need state-approved anything. The best thing that we need is less big government, more freedom, more state rights, and even the state governments need to calm down. And these people just need to calm down. They have everything they need. They make tons of money. They all do insider trading. They're fine. They need to just leave us alone. Obviously, prophecy doesn't say that that's the direction that we're going. So, but again, we don't know if that's where we're at exactly right now. So that's why I blow the whistle on it. Or not blow the whistle, but at least try my best to expose it. And try to at least do my part. Hopefully, do anything I can to oppose this tyrannical system. Because no one wants tyranny. I don't want it for anybody anywhere in the world. Again, constantly go back to one of the things I always mention, which is why I don't want Islam to spread anywhere, because what it is tyranny for women, children, other men, and anyone in any other religion. Any form of tyranny is wrong and should be 100% opposed. Thank you, J.E. Appreciate that. God bless you guys. Appreciate you guys coming on. We're going to log off here now. Are they offering free fries? Yeah, same exact thing. They're going to offer free burger. They're going to be sitting on TV just like the New York guy eating a burger. Oh, yeah, these fries are so good. Take the mark of the beast and come get a second free burger. That's exactly the direction they're going to go. So we'll continue to oppose this, and most importantly, pray for God's discernment. Pray for God to give us the strength to oppose these things in His mind and in His will, and how we do it with love and truth. Nothing is more powerful than the truth. And really, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the saving gospel of Jesus Christ. Because if these people were to see the gospel of Jesus, they say, okay, yes, we do not want to implement any sort of massive government system where people can be marked or control what they buy and sell, because obviously that's going to move in the direction of the Antichrist taking control. Or again, with Islam, or the lost people of the world, or those the Jews, what do they all need? They need the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is the most powerful thing. We can expose and do all this stuff, and God does tell us to do that, but what could actually
Stream
change the
Elements
world
always
and help
has
these
joined,
people
and I like
and help
that, how
the
they
world
make
in
the
almost
bot
in every single way
post
possible
your
is if people would believe
live
Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He's
Twitch.
the only way to God, and that's really what we should be promoting above everything else. Believe in Jesus, believe the Bible. He is the only way to God. Every other way is 100% false. Every government system is not real. It should not be, sorry, every government system should not be given all the power that it should have for the systems to grow. What we really need is a godly government, godly people who believe the Bible and believe Jesus is the only way to heaven. That's my prayer for the entire world.
3060, 96
I don't have hate against anybody. I just don't want any form of tyranny in any
2
way.
days ago.
I want the Bible and the love of Jesus to save every single person on this planet. And to go back to the revival thing, maybe we'll have a revival. That would be amazing. Imagine if the Muslims of the earth, even if half of them realized that the true scriptures were first written in the Bible and Jesus is the only way to heaven. That would change the world for a long time. We don't know when all these things will unfold, and we can pray and hope for a massive revival to the kingdom of God and those believing in Jesus for these things to move in that direction. That's our prayer. That's our hope. Spread Jesus and his salvation above everything else. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that, man. God bless you.
Still blurry.
The Christian channel, I pray in Jesus' name that you will be healed and protected, and that you'll have good news, and that miracles will happen in your life through the power of Jesus Christ. I ask the Father that in Jesus' name. I just pray for you all in Jesus' name to be led to everything we need our answers to. God is the answer for everything in our life. I pray you'll have miracles, healings, direction, clarity, deliverance. That's my prayer for all of you in this chat. And the only one who can do that is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Only way to God. Jesus is the way. God bless you guys. Thanks for stopping on. We'll see you soon.
God bless that, man. Great news. Lots of good messages. Okay, frame time. That's about it. You know, I get 7 in Warzone. I mean, 6. 6, it drops to 4. It varies depending on the scene, the loading scene or whatever. Okay, that's The Last of Us. 1080p high settings. Okay, checking out the 9060 XT performance, which is this one right here. It's very good. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, 60. Alright, so it's like about 20 to 30% faster from the 3060 on average. And obviously the 3060 uses more wattage. That's 160 watts versus 150 watts. And it varies, obviously. It just fluctuates. Not bad, not bad. So less watts for 30% more boost on the FPS. The frame time for me is the most important thing, which is down almost halfway, but yeah. Okay, the video is done. Take a little bit. Okay. Back to... Let's see what is this video about.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to Breaking Points. Emily, great to see you.
It's great to be here. Happy Monday, everyone. We have a big show. The New York City mayoral election is coming up, and we have some pictures, video from a giant rally that happened last night. Actually, on the year anniversary of Trump's Madison Square Garden rally.
I didn't know that.
I think today is the anniversary of the Madison Square Garden rally, and
I have
of course,
to think about what that means.
I think Zoran did that on purpose.
What the astrology of that means. Yeah, there's a bunch of news in the show. So we've got potential trade deal with China we're going to get to. We've got trade tensions with Canada over some Ronald Reagan ad. I have a lot of thoughts about that one. We're tracking the government shutdown. Troops on the verge of not getting paid. A weird anonymous donor who we just learned who they are came in to pay like a small portion of it. Anyway, weird stuff going on there. Candace Owens apparently thinks Peter Thiel is not human. And Elon Musk and Sam Altman, I think, were the three that she name checked in particular. So
that may weigh on your mind as you determine whether Brigitte Macron is or is not a woman, because Candace batting, I don't know, maybe 500 on some of these diagnoses.
Yeah, I guess I'm becoming more persuaded of Candace for a variety of things with this new tape. So. Anyway, a lot that's going on there. Binance CEO pardoned in a corrupt deal. The aforementioned Zoran rally, plus him being attacked aggressively by any number of foreigners from Democrats and Republicans for his Muslim faith. And Karine Jean-Pierre is out with a new book, and it is really something. And the Washington Post review of it, scathing. Did you read this whole thing?
Oh my gosh.
I sort of want to read all. It's a little too long to just read the whole thing out, but whoever wrote this is not a person I was like really familiar with. She did a phenomenal job just taking apart not just Karine Jean-Pierre, but this particular style of like self-congratulatory decorum liberalism.
Yeah, the review is about so much more than KJP. It's about this era in our politics. And reading the review, and we'll get into this, of course, it's sort of like a window into the last decade. And you can kind of feel like this is an era that is over, like a chapter that's over. So it's actually a good block to do after the Zoran block, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Good point. That works well. So we've got a lot in the show. We're going to try to get to all of it, especially because Emily really wants to talk about the KJP piece. So we're going to try to keep these blocks from meandering too long. You know, us ladies like to talk.
I was going to say,
the ladies show.
Odds are low. We'll have only ourselves to blame.
Yes, indeed. All right, so let's go ahead and get to this potential Chinese trade deal. Our negotiators have been talking to their negotiators. Scott Besson is saying that it's looking good. Trump is supposed to meet with Xi later this week. And so he was making the rounds of the Sunday shows. He got asked specifically about soybeans, because this has been a huge sore spot. That's the words I'm looking for. Sore spot for American farmers. You know, major problem. The Argentina thing ties into that as well. And so in any case, he gets asked about this and reveals something I was not aware of, which is he too is actually a soybean farmer. Let's take a listen.
China has been boycotting American soybeans, and American farmers have really suffered. Do you see a real light at the end of the tunnel there? They may allow soybeans again?
Well, Martha, in case you don't know it, I'm actually a soybean farmer, so I have felt this pain too. And there are a couple of things happening here. One, the Chinese have substantially dropped their purchases to almost zero, so they unfortunately have been using American farmers who are amongst President Trump's biggest supporters. I think he had more than 90% support. And then this was one of the biggest crops in 20 or 30 years, so it was a perfect storm. But I think we have addressed the farmers' concerns, and I'm not going to get ahead of the president, but I believe when the announcement of the deal with China is made public, that our soybean farmers will feel very good about what's going on.
So never fear, American farmers, Treasury Secretary, billionaire Scott Bessent is a bit of a soybean farmer himself and is feeling the pain here too.
Is he worth $1 billion, or is he like 500 million?
I thought he was a billionaire, but maybe I'll double check.
Exorbitantly wealthy either way.
Near multi-hundred millionaire, potentially.
Right, and so actually what's kind of interesting about that clip is, first of all, this is why people should divest their financial interests so that you aren't, quote, feeling the pain, because that obviously creates different interests that could be influencing the way you do policy. I'm actually not saying that's the case in Scott Bessent's position here, although the Argentinian beef saga, which we're going to get into, seems like the Argentinian soybean situation had a little bit to do with maybe Scott Bessent's interest, as Ryan and I covered, and we interviewed an Argentinian journalist about all of that. But the other thing is, a lot of these, like, quote, soybean farmers are just exorbitantly wealthy big ag people. And so that's another important part of this. And I suspect we'll get to it with our guests as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's go ahead and put A2 up on the screen. Just, we don't know a lot about this potential deal. I mean, it's not even been inked yet. but they're describing this as a positive framework which has been agreed to prior to this Trump-Xi summit. Some of the pieces, obviously, that are being watched with close interest are the soybean piece, some sort of agreement with regard to fentanyl, the fentanyl precursors that come from China, and then in addition, the rare earth export controls, which China had been, threatening, which could just completely tank our entire economy, which is just one giant bet on AI. So the rare earth mineral situation, very critical. I think, some of the leverage that was applied there from China is probably part of what is helping to potentially bring this deal together at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, the importance of China to the soybean market, you can't possibly understate it. It's so crucial and significant. And so Trump is also in Japan today. He already touched down in Japan. And he'll be going to South Korea. He's already trying to meet with Kim Jong-un, which has nothing to do with soybeans, of course. But this entire swing is to shore up deals that since Liberation Day that was April 2nd, April 1st, April 2nd. They didn't want to do it on April Fool's Day. This is how many months? 6 months. And here's the tour to try to shore up some of these deals and get specifics down and make it work for Americans.
Yeah, indeed. And at the same time, there's a new blow up with regard to Canada. I mean, this is just like typical Trumpian, the dumbest thing possible. The whole thing is extremely annoying to me. So Ontario launched this ad buy that featured snippets from a Ronald Reagan speech where he's talking about how tariffs are bad, right? Reagan being, the neoliberal, the trickle-down economics guy, whatever. Not my economic cup of tea. And part of why me and Sagar and I think you and Brian have been pissed off at the incredibly stupid way that Trump has gone about doing tariffs, because it has created this reaction of just like, oh, the tariffs in general must be bad. And it's like, well, no, they're a tool that can be used with industrial policy that can be effective. But anyway, you get from Canada this Ronald Reagan speech ad where he's talking about tariffs, and this apparently deeply upset President Trump. So let's take a listen first to the ad.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
This was very upsetting to Trump. You can put A4 up on the screen. And we should say, too, by the way, I mean, what Reagan is articulating there was like the standard free trade orthodoxy that reigned in this town up until quite recently. And, really starts to break under Trump. Biden moves in that direction as well. And then we've had, Trump 2.0, where they've just done all kinds of wild things. But in any case, Trump on Truth Social says, the Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement, which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. The ad was for $75 million. They only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. Tariffs are very important to the national security and economy of the USA. Based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. And Emily, he went on from there to announce that they were going to levy an additional across-the-board 10% tariff on all Canadian goods.
And he said he doesn't think he's going to be meeting with Mark Carney again anytime soon. Now, Reagan is such an interesting case study because Reagan was criticized relentlessly by the sort of hyper neoliberals at the time for putting tariffs, very protectionist tariffs on Japan. And so Reagan is the worst possible case study for the Doug Fords of the world. He's in charge of Ontario, Rob Ford, the great Rob Ford's brother, to embrace, because again, there's a lot of daylight between Trump's tariff policy and Reagan's tariff policy. But the particular example of Canada actually is instructive, because the rebalancing of the trade relationship with Canada is something that almost everyone, except for the most like libertarian-minded person would tell you was completely necessary. And so for Canada to deploy Reagan in that way is just, it's like insulting on a million different levels, but it's especially stupid when you think about what the relationship with the U.S. trade relationship with Canada looked like. Like, what do they want? They want just like completely. They want what they were used to, like what you were saying.
Well, and Rob Ford is an interesting character because he's a very kind of like Trumpian figure.
Doug Ford.
Doug Ford.
Yeah,
sorry, Rob was the brother.
They look exactly like.
Yeah, they look a similar character. I mean, Rob was wilder for sure, but Doug Ford is Trumpian type of character. Very bombastic, very nationalist in his way. And so it's also worth remembering, like, this actually wasn't Mark Carney. You know, this wasn't the whole of Canada.
Right.
This is this one province that decided to spend this money. And by the way, again, the idea is this for this to play in American markets, which is what pissed Trump off. But then, you have Trump using like the powers of a king to just like, he's pissed off. So separate and apart from any economic pretext even. He's just like, I don't like your ad. So now the entire country is going to be tariff 10%, which those costs, guess what? Guess who pays those? Consumers, and disproportionately working class consumers in the US who will now bear the cost of Trump just being like annoyed over this stupid Ronald Reagan ad. Scott Bessent was, of course, asked about this on the Sunday shows as well, and didn't have a lot of answers about, okay, well, what are we talking about? Is it 10% truly across the board? Are there going to be any exceptions, et cetera? Let's go ahead and take a listen to what he had to say.
Why is the president setting trade policy based on a television ad he doesn't like?
Well, Kristen, let's think about this. This is a kind of propaganda against U.S. citizens. It's psyops. Why would the government of Ontario? I'm told that they have spent or were planning to spend up to $75 million on these ads to come across the U.S. border. So what was the purpose of that other than to sway public opinion? And, it's some kind of propaganda that the premier of Ontario unilaterally launched.
Will the 10% tariffs apply to all Canadian goods, Mr. Secretary?
Kristen, I've been traveling since this unfortunate event happened. I know that the ad's been taken down. So, we'll have to see.
Does the president know if the tariffs will apply to 10% tariffs will apply to all Canadian goods? Has he made a determination about that?
Well, I'm sure he knows, and I'm sure the Ambassador Greer knows.
I'm sure he knows, but I don't really know. So can't answer your question.
That says it all. That says it all. I'm sure he knows.
But I'm not sure that he is sure that he knows. Like he's probably like, oh, maybe not, but he's probably didn't really think it through. He's just like, yeah, 10%. I'm pissed off, and like that's as much of the thinking as goes into this.
I mean, the billions of dollars that are on the line with these whims is. It's truly, you use the word king, but like that's why tariffs are supposed to go through Congress for the most part, or they were originally supposed to go through Congress for the most part, because there's just, your entire, this is planning of the economy. And obviously there's more to the economy than tariffs, but in a lot of cases, some of the downstream stuff that we talk about, taxes and the like, actually are coming, like the tariffs are the first part of this. It's like, how much business can you do in the United States? What kind of business can you do at what cost in the United States? So other stuff, when it comes to economic planning, in many cases, a downstream of the tariffs. And so you have the executive on a whim. The ad is the best example of this because we know that it's happened before. Like even with Doug Ford, there's been back and forth with Trump and sort of these capricious tariffs. But that's Trump's point, is that, and I think for the first month, like post April 2nd, whatever it was, this uncertainty that Trump was using as his leverage kind of made sense because people were like, whoa, we have no idea what's coming. They were forced to the table. But the longer the uncertainty goes on, people don't have to necessarily come to the table because they say it's not a good bet. I'm betting on what I don't know. And Trump never made it clear what he's actually looking for in particular from these other countries. So yeah, it's either one side of the spectrum or the other. Like Canada either wants their fantasy of Reagan-era free trade, or they want some certainty from Trump as to what he's looking for on that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And that's
Even
why
his
you end up
own
betting
Treasury
in the other
Secretary
way.
doesn't have that. Yeah.
Right, which is where people end up betting in the other direction because you don't have the certainty.
Yeah. Well, Besant and his hedge fund buddies should be happy with the results in Argentina last night.
Yes.
I don't know if you tracked.
Big win.
Malay's party secured, I think, 40% of the vote.
Pretty easy win.
So, and I mean, basically what happened here is Malay's party suffered some losses in local elections. And it looked like the public was turning against, you know, I hesitate to call it libertarian at this point when you're getting bailouts from all kinds of, including our own country around the world. But, you know, it was looking like the Argentinian public was turning on this project. And then the Trump administration comes in and says basically like, okay, we're going to bail you out, but if you don't vote the way that we want you to, we're going to screw you over. I mean, there was an overt threat that was made, and it appears that the public responded to that. So Malay's party performed well. Obviously, this ties into the soybean market as one piece. And the other piece of this that we've been covering as well is the cattle ranching industry and the beef industry. Beef prices in this country have been extremely high and rising. You would think that cattle ranchers who have been struggling and screwed in a lot of ways that we've also been covering over the years, you would think that would be a good thing, you know, for them. Maybe they're getting more on their end, but because of monopoly and consolidation, that has really not come together for cattle ranchers here in the U.S. Then Trump came in and said that to depress the prices, to further screw the ranchers here, he's going to buy beef from Argentina. So to talk about all of these things, we actually have a rancher who also is a journalist who covers the industry extensively. Mike Calicrate is going to join us now.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
What do we hear? Let's see, what did he say?
All right, moving along.
Speaking of Ben Shapiro, let's move on to Candace Owens.
There we go. Candace has some very interesting thoughts about some of the tech oligarchs who are like, you know, completely taking all of our fates into their hands with no input from us whatsoever. So glad to see that she's focusing her mental energy on them. Her take is very interesting, though. Let's take a listen.
I don't even think these people are human. Like, I look at Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Peter Thiel, and I'm pretty sure they're hybrid. You know what I mean? Like, they just look like an Apple software that I should be able to download at night, you know? Like, my phone's getting an update or something. It's something in the eyes. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I know I'm human, but I don't know if I stabbed you if you bleed, you know? I'm not going to stab them, but I don't know if they bleed all the way. I think a battery would fall out. You know what I mean? And I just get that sense. I've always known it was demonic. And people just get on board because, as we talked about in this book, they are using science and this idea of technology and this idea of transforming society for the better to indoctrinate us into accepting this. And it's wrong and it's backwards. And they weigh the main component of all of this is psychology, right? They're able to do it because of psychology, making you think that society has gotten better. Our kids have objectively gotten dumber. We've become fatter. We've become less healthy. We've become less emotionally sound. And yet they are convincing us that this is like humanity's great leap forward. We put a man on the moon and he just like called them up and was like, hey, Prez, what's up? I'm up here. Yeah, it's so cool. It's really great. It's nice. Starry night up here. Okay, I'm gonna text you. I gotta go by in 69, and they get these people. They tell you like he's a genius. They're all writing like he's a genius. So we should just accept that Elon Musk is a genius because like all the writers who are obviously indoctrinated into the occult are telling us that this is the next person that we should worship. The establishment of Hollywood. It was all occults. They were all Aleister Crowley proteges who were just raping kids and summoning demons, and demons are real. So at the same time that they're summoning demons, they are making us all believe that faith is not real. And that has been, I think, the greatest trick that the devil ever played, right? Is making people think that he didn't exist.
Emily, agree or disagree?
I mean, She's certainly cooking, Crystal. She's certainly cooking. She is
cooking. Everyone can agree on that.
She was also potentially blaming Trump for her friend Charlie Kirk's assassination.
I saw that. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
There's a lot of speculation, which we do not need to get into because we are not professional, medical professionals.
Me. Said. I have said this a long time, I get banned or ignored. 2005 when I figured this out, they are just the puppets for the tech side of this demonic takeover. It's not like Jesus did not warn us 2000 years ago.
What's wrong with my typing? She isn't wrong. They look weird. I mean, they talk about the Antichrist. They're not. It is difficult to see the humanity in them. I don't want to fix her. She's not broken. Okay. Okay.
Chinese EVs. They're cheap, they're crappy, they're dangerous. And we're playing with fire if we let any more of them in. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Let's check in with how YouTube has been suppressing the show this week. Be Frayed says, bro, it's been like 2 weeks and I never received notifications. And I thought you guys were taking a break. Bro, WTF, I have the bell activated. Why is this happening to me? I missed like 10 episodes. Imagine how much bigger China Uncensored would be. Imagine how many more people would be informed about the CCP if YouTube weren't running cover for China. If you really want to be notified about new episodes, sign up for my free weekly newsletter at chinauncensored.substack.com. You'll get a list of all the episodes I made that week, plus exclusive content that you won't get anywhere else. When it comes to manufacturing, China is all about quantity over quality. Most of the time, that just means that the little tyke's toy breaks about 5 minutes after he starts playing with it. But sometimes the consequences are much more dire. Take, for example, Chinese electric vehicles. They are everywhere these days, from Tajikistan to South Africa to Brazil. And they're clogging up more than just the roads. In China, there are already graveyards for abandoned vehicles, left to decay because of bankrupt companies, massive oversupply, or car-sharing programs gone horribly awry. It's the one graveyard where you don't have to worry about grave robbers. Wow, what a fantastic way to combat pollution, using filthy Chinese coal plants to create tons, and I do mean tons, of cheap, crappily made EVs, with equally cheap, crappily made batteries that'll contaminate nearby soil and water. Brilliant! This is like trying to combat the opioid epidemic by passing out free needles, which Portland learned wasn't the best strategy.
Hello, sir.
And now,
how are you doing?
China is exporting this brilliant model to other countries. For example, last week, Australians discovered stranded Chinese electric vehicles with no number plates covered in protective wrapping and shipping labels used before cars reached
I'm just
showrooms.
editing videos for now.
They were stored without permission from local authorities.
I am doing great.
Excellent. That's good. God bless you for stopping by and tuning in with me. How's it going, bro? What are you going to do for the rest of the day? You going to go work? Did you eat something already? I'm just listening to the news.
In an unusual spot, a water park. Yes, electric cars at a water park.
Devansh Karlupia
Feels like a final destination
said,
death where the writers gave up
Could
on
we
being
need
creative.
more content?
Jamboree
Okay,
Action
bro,
Park
I
south
got
of Sydney
you.
is storing
I'm
thousands
working
of
on
cars
it,
for
I'm working on
BYD, the
it.
Chinese electric car giant that represents one of the fastest growing
So
brands
what's,
on the road. BYD stashed almost 2,000 cars in Jamboree's car park during the winter when the car
What
park
time are
was
you
closed.
getting on?
Why, a theme park of all places?
I'm gonna start gaming
well,
like
nobody was
sometime
using
after.
the parking lot during the winter, which is the summer for all of us northerners.
I guess
The
I got a lot
toilet
of
flushes
videos here
clockwise like the
still.
Lord intended. But even
I got
when
a
the
lot of
parking
videos
lot
yesterday.
opened up to the public, the cars were still left there.
The water park
But
is now
hopefully,
open for
yeah,
summer,
we'll get
and its car
you,
park is
your
still
name in
filled
there.
with unsold EVs. People aren't happy.
We won a
Residents have
couple
complained to
times
Kiami
yesterday,
Council saying the
so-
water park has become a graveyard for
I don't
unsold
know if
cars
I'll
which
make
came
a
from
little
Port Kembla's shipping terminal, which is a
collage
half-hour drive from up the road.
Just all the
But on the
words.
bright side, with the parking lot now a graveyard, they're all ready for spooky
And they got the
season.
last-
Halloween
Devansh
came early.
Karlupia
This is a
said,
disaster waiting
It's
to happen.
night time here. I always wait for you. Without you, there is no reason to play.
Oh man, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, you told me a lot of times. Yeah, that's why I go live, bro. That's why I go live. Okay. So I guess we can. I'll get on my regular account. I'll play on this computer, just because it gets really hot on that PC, and I'll just use this monitor. It's not like it's a big difference. Okay, let me just let the
happen. In fact, all of these
That
car
room,
graveyards
let me hook up
are.
the
Remember, Chinese
PlayStation.
companies are being incentivized by the government to make tons of cars, but not good cars. They have the same philosophy as the all-you-can-eat at Sizzler. Yeah, it's terrible, but it's a lot of terrible. They're so focused on making as many cars as possible cheaply that they put safety on the back burner. Emphasis on burner, because this is the result. Just look at the Chinese internet, and you'll see that there are tons, and I mean tons, of video clips proving that Chinese EVs are absolute death traps, just waiting to ignite under the right circumstances, aka at any moment, even if the car is just parked. These graveyards are a minefield, except minefields are somehow safer because you need to actually step on one. While these blow up all on their own.
Okay, nice.
Meanwhile, rather than spend more time and resources improving safety standards, Chinese companies put more effort into maintaining a good image, which sadly isn't fireproof.
This is like some just two fried eggs.
Kalupia said, "Carry on your editing. I just ordered something to eat."
Let's see. Thank you, brother. God bless you. Hopefully, you order something delicious. All right, where should I put this? Oh man, no space. We gotta put it somewhere over here.
Devansh Kalupia said, "Sir, you see Japan has their first female prime minister." Devansh Kalupia said, "Simple pizza. What will go wrong with late night pizza?"
This clip perfectly demonstrates my point. Here you can see an EV on fire in Anhui province. The manufacturer's personnel came to the scene to help? No! To remove all the brand logos from the vehicle to prevent the company from getting bad publicity. So my wife decided that she wants to go get something. Again, what a great way to help the environment. Let's create flammable metal pieces of crap that emit toxic fumes.
Devansh Kalupia said, "That's good."
Okay, so he got simple pizza. That would go wrong with the late night pizza. What will go wrong with? I guess nothing. Everything's good if it's fresh, especially if it's fresh. Yum 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 pizza. Yeah, who doesn't like pizza, right? Everybody loves pizza. It's like a taco. I don't know if you guys had tacos over there, but yeah, it's like rice for who doesn't like rice. That'd be weird. It's like milk. Okay, so my wife, she wants to go get something to eat, and then she's gonna go to the store, so I gotta go with her. But by the time I'm back, you'll be done with your pizza as well. So I'll let the videos roll. Let's see. Snap officially gone the real Hunger Games. Okay, let's add to watch later, and I'm gonna play this.
Hey guys, well, I said last week, call me a fool if the government shutdown continued into November, so you can call me a fool, because it looks like that's where we're heading right now. The Republicans and Democrats are both being extremely bullheaded about this.
A little bit.
And you know, when we look at the government shutdown, you hear a lot of people say, well, this is about spending cuts. There's no cuts in the spending bill, okay? It's the same as it was before, with a few extras in it. So we're spending more and more money. We're at $38 trillion in most a large percentage of the United States revenue is now going to paying just the service on that debt. It's a completely scary and unsustainable situation.
I'll let the
and that's a
PC
whole other
already
video,
on.
because that could land us in some serious chaos. What this is being held up over are certain things like funding that had been appropriated and then pulled back. The Democrats want to put further restrictions on what the government can hold back as far as foreign aid, as far as public broadcasting, because, well, let's face it, everybody loves government-paid propaganda. So the Democrats would like to see funding for those issues, as well as certain extensions to ACA healthcare subsidies. None of this stuff has anything to do with the actual spending bill. And some of it is pretty complicated when you get into the healthcare subsidies. There's got to be a lot of reforms, a lot of debates. And so what they're trying to do is basically hold America hostage and say, we want to push this through the way it has been and extend it without having a discussion on it by your elected representatives. And so by holding America hostage, 42 million people are going to be going without food basically next week. And I know, I know what it's like to not be able to feed your family. I was there. There was a period of time where my family used SNAP for a short period of time. We didn't like the fact that everything we did, every bank account was monitored, and the amount of information we had to fork over to get that benefit. And we found our own way around it and decided that that wasn't the route for us. But for 42 million Americans, they do rely on it. And like I said, because of the decisions we made, I know what it's like to be that desperate where you've got to figure out how you're going to feed your family. My son was a preemie. My wife and I both had to leave our jobs. It was a very hard time for us. And we were building this farm and this ranch all at the same time. All of our savings were gone. So it is a scary situation for 42 million people, 12% of the population. Depending on which state you live in, it could be up over 20%. New Mexico, I think, is over 22%. And then there are states like Utah where it's 4.8% of the population. But there are a lot of people that depend on SNAP benefits, and they're basically being held hostage right now for things that have nothing to do with the spending bill. And I was talking to some federal workers just last week who are in the same situation. I mean, they're having to go to work on furlough. They're not able to make their mortgage payments. They're not able to make their car payments. They're not able to make their child support payments. They're in a tough situation, and it's not like credit companies just say, oh yeah, we'll put that on hold for you until the government decides to reopen. And people in this country, even federal workers, have been living paycheck to paycheck for some time. The economy hasn't been that great since COVID. I mean, these are the realities of the times that we are living in. If this were over cutting some of the budget, I might be in favor of it because, like I said, $38 trillion in debt is killing us. It doesn't work. But this isn't about that. Like I said, they're actually raising the budget again. What this is about is some people that want to hold us hostage so that 4 or 5 people can make a decision on ACA benefits and things like propaganda broadcasting. One of the things that I've heard is that they're refusing to pay the benefits out of pure cruelty. That the United States government is trying to hold Congress hostage and saying, well, if we don't get a resolution to this by November 1st, we're just simply not going to pay the SNAP funding. But this actually goes back to the COVID era, when the USDA tried to supplement SNAP, because I was thinking they could use contingency funds as well. They did it during COVID. But what they found was that they were in violation of United States regulations. They're not allowed to pay out appropriated funds before they've been appropriated. So basically in COVID, the Government Accountability Office ruled that USDA, by paying SNAP benefits during the government shutdown of 2019, violated federal funding laws, basically because they spent that money without appropriation. And because they were found to be in violation back then, now government attorneys are saying we're not going to do that again. We're not going to violate the law again. And they really shouldn't. The contingency dollars don't have any appropriation to SNAP. They're there for emergency situations. And if they appropriated those funds wrongfully, it could impact things like baby formula and other essential needs that those funds normally would go to. So it's not that anybody's saying, oh, we don't want to use the contingency funds. In fact, I think they've looked at every single way that they could use the contingency funds before last weekend coming out and saying, there's no money, the well has run dry. The fact is that the well has run dry. They cannot use those funds. So what it's going to take right now in order for them to come out of this government shutdown, people get their SNAP benefits so they can eat, is basically a clean funding bill. A clean funding bill would be a funding bill that doesn't have other things attached to it. And the reason why they attach things to it is, like I said, they don't want to have to debate. They don't want to have to go and spend months and months and months trying to figure out a new plan based upon the elected officials that voters put into office. What they want is what they put in place before. So they're trying to hold this whole thing hostage by saying, hey, I don't care what the American people want. If they want their spending bill, here's what you have to sign off on to get it. And I think that this is a game that is often played on both sides. Okay, it's not a one-sided thing, but it's one that is going a little too far this time. And it just shows how, polarized Washington, D.C. has become. And I almost feel like when you put 42 million Americans in a position of starving, in a position where they're not going to be able to afford to feed their families next month, you're setting up our country for chaos. And I feel like that's almost intentional. It has to be intentional. The arguments that they're making over the ACA subsidies, there are some valid arguments there, but not all of them are. And this is something that I think is a much more complicated situation that does need to be re-examined. It's not something that has made healthcare affordable for everybody. And you know what? Congress knows that. The politicians in Washington, D.C., they know that. They know that there needs to be more reform. They know that there needs to be deeper conversations about it. They know it's not sustainable. They know the situation we're in is not sustainable. But they're pushing this anyway. And so the only thing I can come up with in my thought is that they're doing this intentionally to push us into chaos. When 42 million people start starving in a week, what's going to happen? How's that going to impact you? And everybody's going to feel the impacts. Everybody. Because people are going to stop spending money at local businesses because they've got to put every penny that they have towards trying to feed their family. And food is a necessity. I've always felt like, we've been pushed into this economy where food is super, super cheap. And so we're able to spend money on other things. And no, I don't necessarily like it. But to just suddenly have all that taken away and suddenly have all of these people, all of these consumers have to switch their spending habits just to feed their families, it's going to impact jobs. It's going to impact the overall marketplace. It's going to impact people's investments or stock market investments. It's going to impact how people support your local business. And I think it will get much worse if the government continues to be shut down. it's not going to get any better. So like I said, America is being held hostage over some things that have nothing to do with the spending bill, nothing at all, over things that I think even the people in Washington, D.C. know don't work. But because of that, they're willing to send our country into chaos. If you have a farm, if you have land where you grow food, keep an eye on it, because not everybody is going to be able to figure out their situation like we did. Not everybody has, you know, the resources or the talent to be able to create their own food. And even if they do, it's going to take time. You don't grow food overnight. For those of you who can grow victory gardens, who can do these types of things, this is why we need a more locally grown food supply. This is a time when farmers and local growers can really help out their communities with food banks and other resources like that. Just a couple of weeks ago, I took 6,000 pounds, over 6 tons of potatoes to a compost facility because nobody else wanted them. I'll do a video on that. It's a rather interesting story. But the system is jacked up. It's messed up. And now we're all being held hostage. And because we're being held hostage, it's going to have rippling effects across the entire economy and across everybody, whether you get SNAP benefits or not. Everybody is calling for a much colder, stormier winter. What does that mean for you? Well, it means that there could be possible power outages and some very long, dark days, because as you know, the days are only getting shorter from here on out. Yanasa Trading Co. has finally launched its Bee Yard collection. We currently have natural beeswax candles for sale on Yanasa Trading Co. These candles last about 10 hours each. They're clean burning. Unlike paraffin candles that put toxins into the air, beeswax candles actually help neutralize the air. We only use beeswax candles in our household because we care about our health, we care about our children's health, and we like the smell of warm honey in the dead of winter. Check out Yanasa Trading Co. and order your beeswax candles today.
Joining us now to talk about the president's decision to purchase beef from Argentina is Mike Calicrate. He is himself a rancher, he's a journalist, he's a family farm advocate, and he is also founder of Ranch Foods Direct. Great to have you, Mike.
Oh, thanks for having me, Crystal.
Yeah, of course. So let's go ahead and put a tear sheet up on the screen. This is some of your writing about this deal. You say Colorado Springs rancher, that would be you, says importing Argentinian beef could hurt U.S. ranchers. I'd actually like you, though, to back up a little bit from this present moment and give us a bit of a lay of the land of the cattle ranching industry, and also, you know, beef prices have gone up a lot. Certainly American consumers are very concerned about that. Have ranchers been benefiting from that price increase? What is kind of the state of the industry right now?
No, ranchers have not benefited from consumer price increases. There's a disconnect between consumer prices and what ranchers receive for cattle. And it's a middleman problem, a monopoly problem, essentially a cartel sort of partnership between the biggest meat packers, who now control 85%, the big four control 85% of the slaughter market, in partnership with big retailers who control a very similar share of the retail market. And I'm talking about Walmart, Kroger, Amazon, Whole Foods, Safeway, Albertsons. And so the rancher has really been shut out of his fair share of the consumer dollar, really going back clear to the late 70s, when the book Vicious Circles, The Mafia in the Marketplace detailed how the big meat packers were cooperating rather than competing and stealing really the producer's share of the consumer dollar. So we've lost half our ranchers during this period of time when this cartel has been really depressing the price for livestock at the same time as they're raising prices for consumers. And we've liquidated 10 million cows. So now we've come to a very, very critical time when we just don't have enough livestock to feed our own people. And that's been made up for. It's been a gradual progression, but it's been made up for with imports. So we're importing up to 20% of the meat that we eat today, and it's from wherever the cartel can find it the cheapest to import into this country. And it's a sad state when producers everywhere, it doesn't matter whether you're in the United States or whether you're in Argentina, you're being paid below your cost of production because of this abusive market power that lies in the hands of these very powerful multinational corporations.
And President Trump is obviously concerned about just bringing down the price of beef overall. Could you speak a bit to what's happened in the last, I don't know, year, couple years, just recent history that's behind this price spike that consumers are experiencing now? Is it still deeply connected to those overall trends, concentration? Are there micro factors that have influenced it just in recent history? What's going on now?
Well, right now, because of the real serious lack of cattle here in the United States, and the fact that we've shut down the import of feeder cattle out of Mexico, along with additional tariffs on Brazilian beef, it's inflated that cost to the retailer. And the retailer is absolutely not willing to give up any of their unfair margins that they've been able to achieve because of their abusive market power. And so retailers are charging all they can. They're always going to test what the consumer is willing to pay. And so the problem is, from that point back, the producer isn't getting his fair share, nor is the worker in the meat system, whether it's a slaughterhouse worker or a processing worker, they're not getting their fair share either. And so what we've seen is, with this reduction in imports, is retailers saying, "Oh, this is a great time to raise prices." But the thing you need to look at, as far as the price of beef to the consumer, it's about the same. It takes about the same amount of minutes within an hour to buy a pound of ground beef as it did 20 years ago. And so, are beef prices really too high? Probably not. But is the income to the normal family that's trying to buy beef too low? Absolutely. When you're working 2 and 3 jobs to pay your mortgage, to pay for your technology, to pay for food, of course it's going to hit you hard. But right now at Ranch Foods Direct, we've got $6 a pound ground beef. That is 30-some cents below the national average. Plus, it's local and it's really good. But the industry has sold America on the fact that you've got to get big to be efficient and have economies of scale. All of that was proven false during COVID, when we had empty shelves all across America. While our company, the local regional company in Colorado Springs, that has a supply chain that goes to St. Francis, Kansas on the Colorado border, we never ran out. But we have a local regional model that I think has got to get replicated if we're going to actually feed ourselves going forward. We have to address the abusive market power, the monopoly power of big food. And I know this maybe doesn't matter much when you're talking about AI and you're talking about Venezuelan regime changes and you're talking about all of this crazy stuff in the news, but this is food. This is what we put on our plates every day to nourish our families. And it's not just beef, it's everything that we eat is under the power of a handful of global corporations.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I would love for you to dig into, you mentioned that the industry has liquidated 10 million cows, and that lack of supply is part of why we're seeing these skyrocketing prices now. What led to that liquidation? What was the math of the business logic that led to that outcome?
Decades of being paid below the cost of production is what led to that liquidation. I've been at this about 50 years, and I just remember my in-laws at the dinner table with my sons, reminding them, don't do what we've done. Do not be ranchers. Do not raise cattle. It is not a great lifestyle. You can't get paid enough to pay the mortgage and live a reasonable quality of life. Farmers and ranchers, their basic net income is coming from off-farm income. And so the big food companies have reduced the prices paid to producers because they have the power to do so. And so we have then, in the last few decades, ranching has not been an attractive business, and so we've not replaced the cows as they've gotten older with heifers, and the bankers are clamoring for note payments and mortgage reductions, and we just simply haven't maintained our cow herd because there has not been a fair, open, and competitive marketplace.
And so Trump is saying it's not, we don't totally understand what he's going to do with Argentina yet, but he said, not a lot of beef, it's not going to be a ton, but based on all of that, based on what we know so far, what influence would a modest amount of imports from Argentina, a modest amount of beef imports from Argentina have on the industry as you see it?
Well, right now, I don't know that it would have a lot if you really had a supply and demand market, which we have not had for probably since the 80s. We haven't had that. But the thing is, the announcement of it lets those cattle futures, the Chicago Merc, just totally crater the price on the futures market, which then reduces those prices for calves and feeder cattle and live cattle to the rancher right now. But I don't think Trump understands just how much disconnect there is between retail prices and ranch gate prices. A rancher is in the business of turning grass into cattle, and they hope for a competitive market that will give them a fair share of that consumer dollar. Back in 1970, when I first started, the rancher got about 70%. The producer of livestock got about 70% of the consumer dollar. That dropped to as low as 27% during COVID, to now it's around 54 to 55%. So we still are not getting our fair share of what consumers spend. And that is, again, a result of the market power of the middlemen.
Mike, I wonder if you could talk a little bit of politics here with us. You had in the Biden administration with Lina Khan, you had a real renewed interest in antitrust. I remember there was some at least rhetorical emphasis on, hey, we got to break up some of these meat packers and the cartels that you're talking about. But none of that seems to have really been rewarded, certainly by rural America and your business competitors in the industry. Overwhelmingly went for Trump. So how do you think about the way that Democrats have over years completely lost this constituency? You used to have a John Tester or someone like that who was very sort of like populist antitrust, who was able to win in these states, and I just don't think that it's possible anymore. How do you think about that?
Well, I'm really disappointed that no one politically, Democrat or Republican, has delivered on antitrust law enforcement. And I think the last election would have had a far different outcome if they would not have kept Lina Khan with the Federal Trade Commission in the closet. I mean, she was working to improve competitive markets and fairness all the way around consumer welfare and corporate power and all of that. And we just didn't even know about it. Kamala Harris never even mentioned it. So we've never had support. In fact, going back to the Obama years when they had the concentration hearings across the country, we thought full well, with all of that proof and all of that information about the abusive market power of big meat packers, that there would be some relief. And Lina Khan wrote the article, Obama's Game of Chicken. It was in the Atlantic. It was amazing piece of writing. And then eventually she made her way into the chair of the Federal Trade Commission and was doing absolutely the best work we've seen in 100 years. Trump comes in and fires her. So that is just how unbelievably ignorant the current administration is about the real needs of consumers and producers around our food system in particular. Although Lina Khan looked at a lot of other things, but she's the one that blocked the Kroger Safeway merger. So Safeway Albertsons merger, that was absolutely required. And prior to that, we blocked the Cisco US Foods merger. But the problem we're seeing now is these companies that try to merge get to know each other, and whether it's approved or not, they still cooperate and work together to maximize their profits. I mean, how is it that Cisco earns or makes 100% return on equity? ROE right now, if you look it up on Google, Cisco's right at 100% return on equity. That's not a competitive market. And that comes at the expense of producers and consumers and all the workers that are in between.
And your case actually is that goes straight to those beef prices, that if you have, it's essentially like the greedflation argument that the Biden administration made a half-hearted attempt to sell to the public, that when you have consolidation, you're able to just ratchet up, the retailers themselves are able to just ratchet up the prices. Is that, am I getting that right based on what you were explaining?
100%. That is exactly right. You give them the ability to extract wealth and they will do it to the maximum amount allowable that they're able to. And you know, this all goes back to the corporate responsibility of providing maximum returns to shareholders, but it's honestly maximum returns to executive level pay.
Yeah. Mike, last question to you. You know, what would your pitch be to Americans who are listening to this, who are like, well, that's all well and good, but like prices are too high, and if it's going to help to import beef from Argentina or wherever, why don't we just go for that? Because my pocketbook is hurting right now. What would you tell Americans about why they should care?
Well, I tell Americans they should care because importing Argentine beef is not going to lower your prices. It might lower the prices to ranchers, which guarantees that the herd won't be rebuilt and won't be feeding us in the future, but it will not lower prices, not with the cartel, the monopoly power of the middlemen. And think about it a minute from the Argentine perspective. I mean, their economy is not doing great. Their consumers are not doing great. So we go down there and we're going to take meat off the plates of Argentine consumers, raise their prices, only to use it as a lever to lower prices to ranchers and not lower prices to American consumers. And the other point that no one is making is when Argentina gets favorable trade conditions with the United States, the highest and best consuming market in the world, how many animals transship, cross those borders into Argentina that then are able to go into the United States at the best prices on the globe.
Mike Halcrate.
And only the middleman making the money.
Yeah. That's
so the Argentine producers under the same pressure. Yep. Same big companies, JBS, Marfrig, you know, the biggest companies in the world are transacting the deal.
And they'll be subject to the same nightmare you've been living here. Mike, thank you so much for helping us understand. Tell people, you know, where they can find you, where they can buy your products, all of that good stuff.
Well, if you go to MikeCalcrate.com, you'll see what we're up to, and I've got a blog there. But as far as the Ranch Foods Direct model, which I would hope others might replicate around the country to connect producers more closely to consumers, go to RanchFoodsDirect.com. and you'll be able to see what we do there.
Just put in my order yesterday, so.
Oh, thank you so much.
Excited to see that. I love it. Mike, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Great to have you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
We have a new corrupt pardon coming from the Trump administration. This one from Binance founder, commonly known as CZ. Caroline Levitt was asked to defend this deal. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what she had to say.
On the pardon of Changpeng Zhao, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing that name, Binance has significant business interests with World Liberty Financial, the president's family's crypto company. How do you respond to the allegations from Democrats that this is a corrupt act?
I would respond and say the president is exercising his constitutional authority to grant clemency requests. And the president and the White House have a very thorough examination of every pardon request that comes to the president's desk. It is thoroughly reviewed by the White House Counsel Office, and I spoke with our great White House counsel about the pardon after it happened. This was an overly prosecuted case by the Biden administration. Even the judge in the case admitted that the Biden administration was pursuing a egregious over-sentencing of this individual. And the previous administration was very hostile to the cryptocurrency industry. So the president wants to correct this overreach of the Biden administration's misjustice, and he exercised his constitutional authority to do so. And to the Democrats, I would just say there's nothing more corrupt than what President Biden did on his way out the door, pardoning his extremely corrupt son and many of his associates.
Oh my God, the whataboutism I am so sick of. Just so you guys, so let's put D2 up on the screen to give you guys the backstory. So first of all, if you're not a crypto person, Binance is a giant in the space. I think it processes some like 2/3 of all crypto transactions. So this is an incredibly powerful company that he's created. It's also
like being the head of Visa or something.
It's also an incredibly sketchy company that he has created. And this is, I've done, did a lot of digging into this character because there were a lot of questions when SBF was taken down, and CZ was involved in that, by the way. But then there was a bit of a run on Binance. There's a question whether they had sufficient reserves. They at that time really didn't have any like accounting to back up the claims that they were making publicly. There were long-time allegations, including some that were, borne out and the company took action on with regard to insider trading, because one of the things that's really important about Binance to understand here is that if they decide to list your whatever shit currency, then it's incredibly important.
Crystal coin.
So, yeah, exactly. So if you have insider knowledge that they're about to list it and they're about to tout it, oh, well, guess what? You can make a lot of money off of that. So in this, sort of Wild West space. So according to the New York Times, they say Mr. Zhao had pled guilty to money laundering violations in 2023, served 4 months in federal prison after a years-long investigation by financial regulators and U.S. prosecutors. To seek the pardon, Zhao hired lawyers and lobbyists with ties to the Trump administration, while Binance struck a business deal with World Liberty Financial, the Trump family's crypto startup. This was not just any business deal, by the way. We're talking about a $2 billion business deal that they did with Trump's family crypto startup. Mr. Zhao is the most powerful executive, they say, in the crypto industry, worth an estimated $85 billion. He commands a vast social media following of worshipful investors who view him as something of a crypto oracle. With a few well-timed posts in 2022, he helped prompt a market panic that resulted in the demise of FTX. That was Sam Bankman-Fried's entity, the exchange that was once one of Binance's top rivals. To spearhead his clemency push, Mr. Zhao hired Teresa Goody-Guillen, a former Securities and Exchange Commission lawyer who also happens to represent Zach Witkoff, the son of Trump's Middle East advisor. Working alongside that lawyer was Ches McDowell, a lawyer and lobbyist who is a longtime hunting companion of Don Jr.
It's not a name, though. That's a made-up name.
I
don't believe that's a real name.
Both are, I think, fake names.
Ches McDowell?
Goody-Guillen and Ches McDowell.
Ches McDowell.
Anyway, Mr. McDowell was apparently spotted with Trump Jr. at the White House last week. So did the $2 billion deal. I'm sure said all kinds of nice things. God only knows whether he was funneling money into Trump's shitcoin, because we have no transparency around that. Certainly possible as well. And then hired, friend of Zach Witkoff and Don Jr. to get this deal done. That's how this White House operates.
Yeah, Witkoff. So Zach Witkoff is the founder of the Trump crypto firm World Liberty Financial. And so the World Liberty Financial of it all actually even dwarfs the fact that Binance has hired like Ballard Partners, which is that's where Pam Bondi and Susie Wiles had lobbied before entering the administration. So yes, they've hired the lobbyists and all of that, but what does that even matter when your family is so heavily invested in a similar, well, actually in something that benefits from the industry, that CZ is so powerful that the industry benefits. Like if he gets a cold, if he sneezes, the industry gets a cold. It's that type of relationship. And the other thing I wanted to mention from the New York Times coverage here, that, it's just a little bit amusing to see it put like this. Long considered the crypto industry's richest man, Mr. Zhao, a Chinese-born executive who now lives in the UAE, admitted that he had violated the law by failing to install rigorous compliance systems at Binance. That allowed people in countries under sanctions and terrorist groups like Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State to move money on his platform. So, while everyone is right now calling Zohran Mamdani a jihadist, here you have a man being pardoned that, according to the Times, allowed terrorist groups like Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State to move money around. Complicit. Perhaps,
Interesting.
might be the word.
Interesting. Let's put CoffeeZilla's tweet, guys. This is D4 up on the screen, just to give you the timeline of like the business transactions here. And of course, he is losing his mind over all of this. He says, backstory is CZ's pardon. So November 2023, Binance and CZ plead guilty, $4 billion plus fine. March 2025, Trump, World Liberty Financial, launches a stablecoin called USD1. Stablecoins are like back to currency, or, and I think in this case, yeah, Treasury bonds. March 2025, $2 billion investment into Binance by MGX. May 2025, $2 billion investment was paid for in USD1. So $2 billion going into this WLFI's stablecoin. May 2025, CZ admits he applied for a pardon. October 2025, CZ gets a pardon. Result, USD1 is backed by treasuries. This yields $60 to $80 million per year for World Liberty Financial, so long as Binance does not redeem that $2 billion in USD1. So he sort of breaks down here for you the timeline and the net cash benefit directly into the pockets of the President of the United States. And you know, we could have pulled, and maybe we will in a future show, Tucker is out there saying, I think that Bitcoin is a CIA op.
Yeah.
Which is interesting as well, because he's like, you know, they're like using this as another way to steal from you and control you, et cetera. Trump previously had been very skeptical of crypto. He said he didn't like that it was a competitor to the dollar. That was his initial instinct. Well, that instinct changed dramatically when he received money from industry insiders and then himself realized how much he could personally cash into the tune of billions of dollars on, you know, his own crypto coin, the way that, you know, his supporters flooded money in. And then in addition, it's a just naked way for people to directly bribe him. So Trump's personal net worth has skyrocketed. I mean, really think about this. Most of Trump's net worth at this point has come about since he was inaugurated this second time around. So already obviously a tremendously wealthy guy. The bulk of his net worth is from his direct corruption during this presidency.
Yeah, this is Forbes in June. Crypto now accounts for most of Donald Trump's net worth. So an estimated $3.3 billion of his total $5.5 billion lies in, quote, the buzzy industry, according to Forbes. But what that means is it's all come just in the last year or so. Like this is a man who has been renowned as a billionaire for decades and a tabloid fixture. His entire show was based on his business success. And now most of his net worth isn't from any of that. It's from crypto. Yeah. And of course, crypto, you can argue, was built on his reputation and the coin is built on his reputation, whatever. Yeah. But it's not it has nothing to do with real estate. It has nothing
to do with real anything.
Well, yeah, that's
these are just, I mean, it's just a purely
fake estate.
Imaginary. Yeah. Imaginary. You can't even call it an asset. It's just speculation. It's just a pyramid scheme. That's all it is. But he is the scammer in chief, you know? And so that's why it disgusts me to hear Caroline Leavitt being like, well, what about Hunter Biden? Like Hunter Biden and his freaking paintings and Burisma and whatever. If you guys had a problem with that, that is nothing. And I did have a problem with it. I still have a problem with it.
100%.
It is nothing compared to one of the scams that Trump has run in the second term, one of the corrupt deals that they have struck. It's just wild. Not to mention, you know, and the CZ case demonstrates this incredibly clearly, the way that if you get on his good side and you hire the right people and you got enough money, the laws don't apply to you. You can get away with whatever. This president is actually antithetical to law and order, truly. Because yes, if you're Letitia James, he's going to dig up some mortgage application that you made a mistake on and fixed later on, and he's going to throw the book at you. If you're George Santos or one of the other 10 Republican congressmen who committed crimes, you'll get off scot-free. If you're rich enough to pay your way in and willing to like kiss the ring, then you'll get off scot-free. It's a crime spree. It's an open season for a crime spree if you happen to be one of his friends or wealthy enough to buy that kind of access.
That's the other part of this. Like with some of these Hunter Biden deals, there's a very strong evidence that foreign policy was being manipulated by Hunter Biden laundering his family name and selling access. This is the entire crypto industry that Donald Trump, like why is Trump making so much money in crypto? Why is he getting these great deals through? It's because of what he's doing for the crypto industry. Like what he's doing for this industry that he himself was once deeply skeptical of, that many Americans are deeply skeptical of. And that includes huge concentrations of power, much to the chagrin of people. We interviewed someone on this recently who used to be super involved in Bitcoin world.
That's right.
Peter Ryan, I think. Yes. He came on the show and talked about the dream, sort of like the dream of the internet. It's the same thing with the dream of crypto, that it would be decentralizing power. And right now it's very, very clearly doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And Trump, his net worth is tied to that industry's fortune and favor. And that's part of it's not just that Trump is enriching himself, it's that he's enriching himself at the sake of the economy, because crypto is now a significant, what's the best way to put it, manipulator of the entire economy.
Yeah.
Like the entire economy
It's completely intertwined. In
Yeah,
the
it's
whole
intertwined.
economy.
That's the right
And
word.
these people are too big to fail. Like there's, you know, at some point in the future, we'll probably be on the hook for some kind of a crypto bailout.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
Yeah. So I did want to give credit. Rokana has his eye, you know, trained on this problem, especially with regard to the president and his family's corruption. He's introducing a bill to ban this sort of crypto trading for members of Congress and for the president. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what he had to say.
In response to Trump's pardon of the former Binance CEO, you heard what Senator Elizabeth Warren said. If Congress doesn't stop this kind of corruption, Congress owns this kind of corruption. Explain to me how exactly Congress can do that.
Elizabeth Warren is spot on. Look, we have a president who is enriching himself and his family in an obscene wealth that is unprecedented in American history. And people need to wake up to what's going on. It's corruption right before our very eyes. I mean, you had a foreign billionaire who was convicted criminally of money laundering to Hamas and to Iran. And he invests money in the president's family's stablecoin, and that basically helps him get a pardon. And the president's family is making millions of dollars as president of the United States. I'm introducing a resolution to say that we need to stop the president, his family, or any members of Congress from trading in crypto, and certainly from accepting any money from foreign governments or foreign entities. It is corrupt.
So I appreciate Roe making moves on this bill. I don't know how, I doubt it'll even come to a vote, but you know, if it did, I don't see how you can oppose it. Like, I'm sure if you ask the American people, what, 95% would be like, yes, of course, there should be a ban on this type of, you know, trading and the direct corruption that it enables. But, you know, you want to talk about a democracy problem. That's the kind of democracy problem that we already have.
That is the congressman from Silicon Valley, for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I mean, think if you're like on the fence about this, nobody has a better front row seat to corruption in this industry than Roe.
But you know, Sagar and I interviewed Shoykai Chakrabarti, who's running for Congress against Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco. And Sagar asked him a question about like, well, what about these, you know, rich tech guys? Like, aren't you going to have to cater to them? And Shoykai was like, well, even though there's, you know, more probably millionaires per capita in this area than most parts of the country, they still are a tiny percentage of the electorate.
Right.
So if you're actually catering to the, you know, vast working class in the, you know, in the Bay Area and in San Francisco specifically, you still have a much larger base of voting support than if you're just trying to cater to these few multimillionaires, and that, you know, that Roe appears to be operating on a similar logic here.
Yeah.
And you know who else is operating on a similar logic?
Who's that?
Zoran Mamdani in New York
what
City.
a transition.
Not catering to the oligarchs.
On your A game this morning.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com. Turning now to the economy, a blockbuster new interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin, who's got a new book out. 1929 says a crash could happen again, referencing the great crash that caused the Great Depression. Let's take a listen.
And in the 1920s, people were saying stocks were going to go up because the entire world was buying into the U.S.
I think that's very true. I would actually specifically point to a technology story back then, which was radio. The ticker symbol was radio. The company was RCA. They also, by the way, not only had the technology for radio, they had the patents for television. And that was the NVIDIA. I mean, that was the meme stock of that era because people were buying into this future that we were all going to experience. And they wouldn't have been wrong, by the way. The conundrum is, I think the stock split adjusted at the peak was got to 530 some odd dollars. And by 1932, it was like $3.
So there you go. He's making some parallels there about the parallels between today's market and the 1920s. Obviously, you could probably say that at any time about some stock. People have been talking about crashes and all of that for some time, but you know, it's looking a little bubbly. I think if you ask me, I spoke to a friend recently who said, if you really want to be scared, it's not March of 2000, it's January of 1999. So we're still at the early part of where things might go for the dot-com crash. I think the parallels, I think what scares me the most are those insular deals that I haven't stopped talking about here on the show. Because that's the type of stuff where you're like, yo, man, this stuff is not just fake, it's fake beyond
It's
fake,
like a
and everybody knows
self-flicking
it's
ice cream
fake.
cone.
Right,
kind of a
so it's
deal.
like OpenAI announces a deal with a company. That company gets 10% of its stock to OpenAI. Then the stock goes up, and then the amount that they're paying is covered by the overall value. And this happens over and over and over. It did it with AMD. NVIDIA did it with another company. OpenAI just announced a deal with Broadcom. It's like they have figured out their secret sauce, is that investors are so bullish on the promise of AI that even when they put cash out the door, as the cash out the door is enough for a requisite rise in the stock, that if they take the stock, the value goes up and it's effectively nothing there. When in reality, nothing has happened. It's a 5-year deal. Who knows? Chips is a hard business. Can they really make them? You know, it's not that easy, as we've all figured out. It's been a few years since the CHIPS Act. How's that going? Not particularly well in terms of our production. It's literally probably the hardest manufacturing business in the world. And yet it's all premised on, oh, we eventually are going to get to a place of AGI and the profits and all of that are going to be so extraordinary and so unbelievable. And right now, the reality, it just doesn't exist. I was telling you guys yesterday, as the audience knows, I've been watching some more NFL. You know, it's pretty crazy and weird to watch Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT running consumer ads on the NFL net, or like on the various networks. So, for example, Microsoft Copilot is running ads right now about that dumb animation, like turning a photo of yourselves into anime, and they're like, Microsoft Copilot, where you can free image generation for everybody. I'm like, really? That's what you're selling to people? That's the promise of Copilot? Same with ChatGPT. They're like, use it to plan a vacation or something. And it's like a brother and a sister driving through the mountains. And I was like, so that's what all the data centers and all this shit is for? Is for this?
It's for, like for glorified Google.
Right, like Google Plus, right? A Gemini, right? I mean, if you look at the ads for these, it's not impressive. It's not at all what it was sold as. Now, is it a good research tool? Sure. Does it help some efficiency a little bit and all that? Yeah. But that's not, worth the hundreds and trillions of dollars of market cap of where we are. So that's why I'm just getting very nervous. But you know what my cope is and why the market can't crash? The whole economy is fake. This shit is way more fake than 1999. Back in 1999, we actually we made shit in this country, like actual stuff. We had a lot more fundamentals. All of the bonanzas and all of that, of Wall Street subprime and all that hadn't happened yet. A lot of the fakeries and terms of accounting, etc. This is pre-Enron. So it's like when I start to think about where things are today versus then, like I think we've actually gotten much more sophisticated at washing all this together.
Building the house of cards.
So maybe it can't crash.
Keep it going.
Yeah, I think we put the super glow down,
I don't know.
and now it's not as easy to crash anymore. I could be totally wrong, but that's my cope.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is like, there isn't a lot of indication that AI so far has, there's all this projection, it's going to increase employee productivity. And so that's going to create all this GDP growth. There is not a lot of indication that that is happening yet. And we know that the vast majority of AI applications are not profitable, like these companies that keep spending more money and acquiring different other companies, and their stock keeps going up and up and up. It's not like they're making money on any of these investments. So that's a bit of a red flag. So on the one hand, there's the risk of this technology doesn't really pan out to be as, transformational as it was supposed to be. And at some point, there's a reckoning with that, and that creates a crash. The other possibility is that it is as transformational as being promised, and it creates a mass layoffs and societal tumult. So it's kind of a distressing story, either way you cut it. The other piece of this is that with Emily and I covered this yesterday. Sorry, I want to get your take on it too, with the China trade war stuff. China really holds our fate in their hands right now. If they want to pull the pin on us with regard to rare earths, they can do it. Now, they have vulnerabilities as well, right? We're very interconnected in terms of our economies. But that's why on Friday, when they were like, oh, we're going to up the export controls on export restrictions on rare earth minerals, why there was such an instant market freakout, because I was just looking, China controls about 70% of global rare earths mining, 90% of refining capacity. That's a really important piece. And 92% of these type of magnet production that are critical for motors and EVs, wind turbines, and defense tech. All of this is very critical also for AI. So if our entire economy is a bet on AI, and we're deeply reliant on this country that Trump is, set on antagonizing, that's a really dicey situation to be in as well.
I don't know. With the China thing, yeah, you're absolutely right about the rare earth minerals. I just don't know how much of the trade fight is fake. It's like one day it's 100% tariff, the next day it says not going to happen. By the way, as we are speaking, the Dow is falling, the expectations because of US-China tensions resurge, even though it went up over 1% yesterday when it looked like China tensions were cooling. All I know broadly is that yes, we have serious fundamental and strategic risk whenever it comes to China. And there were a lot of easy ways to get away from that, as in not just chips, but even this. I mean, look at every tax bill. Every time you touch the US tax code, it's a massive missed opportunity. It's a zero-sum game. We only open up the tax code every 5 years. So every 5 years, you have a bite at the apple to actually do something. And in this particular case, they didn't really do much to boost any American manufacturing in the critical sectors that we need it the most. And our trade policy is so schizophrenic. Are we really prioritizing rare earth minerals or not? Not really, right? It's all just scattershot. It's not serious. And in the interim, at every year, China continues to go exponential. Now, I've seen a lot of criticism about, oh, you're glazing. Listen, we can acknowledge all of their problems. Authoritarian government, bureaucracy, a lot of it is for show in some cases, like the bridge, for example. There was some criticism of people who covered the bridge, like, oh, you're buying into Chinese propaganda. I'm like, well, even if it is a bridge to nowhere, it's still a remarkable engineering accomplishment. And the truth is that that's the way that they get the rural population on their side. I encourage people to read Dan Wang's book. People who live in rural China have watched in 20 years a literal exponential increase in their life.
Yeah.
Now, compare that to Appalachia or to this. I was just looking this morning at a graph of life expectancy. Southeastern United States is life expectancy 20 years lower than the rest of the country. Wow, who is doing anything about that? Is anybody doing anything about that?
Right,
no.
that's crazy.
Okay. And so I look at that. I look at the housing price. At the very least, the CCP pretends to give a shit about your problems. Sometimes they're actually really good at it, at solving them. Sometimes not. They give you a lot of propaganda, but they don't even pretend here. That's all. What I admire is the level of seriousness for the critical industry and for their long-term thinking. I mean, people laughed, including me, at Made in China 2025. I remember when it came out, I said, this is a joke. It's true. It worked. I would say the vast majority, if you go back to 2015 and read the documents, most of what they set out to do, which is declaring independence in batteries, critical minerals, in airplane production, and in high-tech manufacturing, I wouldn't say they won entirely. They haven't achieved total autonomy, but they made a lot of progress. Now compare the same rhetoric of 2015 in the United States about the pivot to Asia. Where are we today? How's the pivot to Asia going? It's literally 2025. What's the lead block of this show? Israel, Palestine. Who's Trump meeting with on Friday? Fucking Zelensky about Ukraine. Like, oh, what? It's like that's literally two conflicts of no importance in the grand scheme of things to the USA. And that's what everything is focused on, not to mention all the dollars, all of the attention in Washington. So it's like, that's what I'm talking about, is you have to zoom out. And I've seen this stuff from afar, literally here in the city for the entire period of 2015 now to 2025. And I think we've actually made less progress if you look at manufacturing, if you look at the level of seriousness, divided politics, life expectancy, even COVID. We criticized them for zero COVID. I certainly did. I thought it was incredibly stupid. But it turned out what they were able to do was actually exert even more control over their population. People predicted that would lead to rise up hasn't happened. Literally hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So, we have to stop putting our own values or expectations on this other country, and we need to live in ours. And the truth is, we live in a financialized bubble where the cost of living is unbelievably high for the vast majority of people who make under $100,000. That's the truth. And that's not the truth over there.
The life expectancy thing doesn't get talked about enough.
Oh, no.
It's such a basic metric of how your society is doing. And when you see life expectancy, like not just flatlining, but actually falling, and you know, like that is such an indictment of a society, and is also such a clear indicator that you're gonna have some fucked up politics too. That is like
Russia, 1990.
almost
there you go.
100%.
How do you think
certainty.
Putin came to power? People are like, oh, he's so authoritarian. He just came out of nowhere and he tricked the Russians. I'm like, oh, he tricked them? Or they were massively alcoholic. They got their economy destroyed, their population decimated, their empire was, you know, torn apart by the West. Then the West created NATO and started marching it forward. How do you? This stuff doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Exactly. And not excusing Putin. We can sociologically understand why that might be traumatic for a population. You're exactly right. Here in the US, you have almost 10 years now of declining life expectancy, massive obesity, pre-diabetic. Yeah, what do you think is going to happen? Where do you think Maha and all of that comes from? People are so furious. And then urinized health insurance premiums are about to go double. All right, people are going to go radical. People are going to go crazy when you start paying. I'm already paying like $9,000 a year for health insurance for me, my wife, and my one kid. All right, so $9,000. I have a $14,000 deductible. $14,000. That will wipe out any average person in this country. Wipe out one medical emergency. You're dead from a bankruptcy perspective. So put that on everybody else. And just think about where that's going to go.
Well,
and then,
you know who has something to say about that? Marjorie Taylor Greene, sounding off on prices and has been sounding the alarm about these spiking health insurance premiums that are on the horizon. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Costs have not come down. I myself can tell you my apartment here in Washington, D.C., the electricity bill is $100 more than it was last year, because you can look at your own bill and look at costs. Prices have not come down. That is a reality. People's wages have not gone up. That's another reality. And so Americans are continuing to have a very difficult time.
The thing that's amazing to me, Sagar, is this is so basic. Like, it's so basic and so obvious, and everybody knows it. And yet for her to say it is like really remarkable.
Because
it
Trump
feels
demands,
really remarkable.
Because Trump and the Republican Party demand fealty. You're not supposed to talk about it when he's in office. The tariffs, the economy, and all of that is booming. And she's like, no, that's just a reality. I think what I give her credit for is she always speaks, at least more recently, from a point of view as a mother and as a congressman of this district. She talks about her children and about their economic. I mean, I think that is the only way that a healthy society can look at the political problems, are not only how does this affect me, how does this affect the next generation? Looking at you, boomers, looking directly in the camera at you, it would be nice if you guys started to think a little bit more like that. But that's the issue. You know, I see a recent clip, I don't know if you did, of Ron DeSantis talking about when you buy a TV, you don't have to pay taxes on it every year, comparing it to property tax. That's what he said about a TV. Yeah, that's the same thing. You know, the TV, apparently you need roads and all of that to operate a TV. And so I'm gonna lose it, you know, when I watch this stuff happen, because let's put this Wall Street Journal piece, please. Stronger growth, weaker hiring. Forecasters see a split screen economy. And what is the split screen? It's exactly what we keep hammering home here, is at the top 10%, things seem fine. At the rest, below 100,000, yeah, it's not fine. And the split screen economy is one where without AI, we would be in a recession. Without all of this AI fakery, we would not only have a top and bottom recession, we would be in a full-blown GDP recession. It's the only thing that is propping up the economy right now. And it's the only reason that rich people aren't beating the drum, because their stock valuations and portfolios are sky high. But everything right now is weird. Gold, all-time high. We covered that.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is near all-time high. Stock market, near all-time high. That's not supposed to happen. Like, those are supposed to be countervailing, right? So I don't know. The whole thing, it's making me crazy, because it's just every day of stupidity marches on. And that's one more day that we're not doing anything about it. She's the only politician on the right now, which is actually trying to elevate that in the discussion. And she's getting blown to hell for it, from Israel to prices. I saw someone calling her a California liberal. I was like, okay,
I saw that too.
If that's the standard now, we are cooked. like cooked, if that's how it's going to be.
MTG is lib. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last piece here, just this is kind of what I was referencing before about, okay, well, how is AI? How is it doing? How's it going? How's it impacting the workforce? Because part of the bet is that all of these companies are going to invest in AI. That's going to be where a lot of the revenue for AI companies come from, that it's going to increase worker productivity. We could put this last one up on the screen. There's just not a lot of evidence that this has really come through yet. Now, it might. It's still early days, right? And not just in terms of the technological development, but in terms of companies and workers figuring out how to use the tech. There are some early indications that in coding effectively, which is a huge irony since we were all told learn to code, that this is the technology of the future. That's like the one place where you can look, new college graduates coming out who have like computer science degrees are struggling to find work, because that is the place where AI has been the most disruptive in terms of replacing entry-level workers. But outside of that, there isn't a lot of indication that the promise is bearing fruits as of yet. So you know, some massive, like mind-boggling amounts of money have been spent on this. The amount of resources that are being sucked up, your electricity bill likely going up, as Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about, as a result of these data centers sucking up so much power. You know, water usage, you've got wells that have gone dry when these data centers have located nearby, which is actually something I'm concerned about in where I live, where they're planning to locate a
Rise up, Crystal B. Karen.
data facility.
Rise up in city council
I'm
and
on
say
well
no.
water, so I'm you know, a little concerned about that myself. But in any case, all of these massive bets being placed, and as of yet, the promise and certainly the profit to go along with those massive bets has not come to fruition.
Bingo. Yeah, everyone watch it, and it's like I said, it'll either come true, like what they're claiming. There's three options. It'll either come true with AGI and what they're claiming, which is going to lead to a massive surveillance oligarchical state. You guys covered that yesterday.
Yeah.
The whole Peter Thiel thing. Number two is it won't come true, but because the economy is so financialized and so fake, is that we'll have like a modest period, but we'll have no crash. And option three is a full-blown crash. So I really honestly don't know which is worse, because the status quo is bad, the alternative is bad, and the victory scenario is also bad.
There's a fourth, even more dystopian option, which is that one company achieves AGI and has all the dystopian results we're concerned about, but because all the other companies, you know, lose the race, there's still a dramatic crash because it's only that one company that succeeds. And by the way, almost a certainty out of all of this is that more wealth and more power is going to be consolidated in the hands of a few. How do you think that's going to go for all of us? How do you think that's going to go for our society? I mean, already, I think the massive wealth and income inequality gap is part of what's fueling, you know, all of the turmoil that I see in our politics. So we're going to consolidate that even more, and we're, you know, hand it to Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, whoever else. And it's not even about, like, I don't like any of those guys, but it's not even about whether they're good or bad people. Like, that much wealth and power consolidated, concentrated in the hands of one or a handful of individuals is just a very dangerous situation, and, you know, with potential dire consequences.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
Democrats are pushing back hard against the Trump administration for canceling billions of dollars worth of energy projects. If we can put up the first element on the screen here, Martin Heinrich, the top Democrat on the Energy Committee, is saying that as a result of the cancellation of over $7 billion worth of contracts, we're going to see staggering increases in energy prices for the American people. And he argues that they're canceled completely illegally because contracts, the money had already been appropriated by the Biden administration and contracts had already been reached on these projects. He also noted that coincidentally, 218 of the 233 projects ranging from battery storage to hydrogen solar were in states with Democratic governors. Shocking. Now, energy that's produced in blue states, by the way, does go out to red states, but whatever. Anyway, I put up this next element. This is on the heels of this, the Trump administration's cancellation of the largest, what was going to be the largest solar facility in the country. So it would produce 6.2 gigawatts of energy when it was finished. That's enough to power 2 million homes. This was out in the Southwest, which is like everybody, energy starved. So to walk us through, what all this means is John Powers. He's the CEO of Clean Capital, and he's joining us this morning. John, welcome to Breaking Points. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And so John, can you talk to us a little bit about what the energy industry is facing broadly, but the clean energy industry in particular over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, the last 6 months in particular have been incredibly challenging, really from an understanding of where we're going. We have invested over $1.5 billion in over 27 states. We've built over 0.5 gigawatt worth of projects and are selling to customers that want to buy our electricity, everyone from Fortune 100s to folks buying community solar. The reality is there's a massive demand for what we do, but the policy uncertainty that this administration is putting in front of us really has put huge roadblocks into getting projects built and financed. The reality is, though, that as electricity prices continue to rise in this country, and they are rising for a very simple reason, there's a growing demand like we've never seen before, right? The last 20 years, we've got a pretty steady state demand in this country, but because of data centers and other electrification of everything efforts, electricity prices are going up significantly. Here in Buffalo, where I am, they expect a 20% rate hike next year. So what we're doing is adjusting to that new reality and looking to where and how we can build projects.
And which Biden bill was it? The IRA? I forget. I always mix up the
IRA. Yeah, the BBB became IRA.
Yeah, BBB became IRA, and then there's the OBBB of this administration. But tell us maybe a little bit about how, with the IRA credits, there were some adaptations that had to be made afterwards to get stuff actually built and off of the ground, and that was in the process when the Trump administration came in and canceled a lot of this. So what is maybe you can give us a sense of sort of the trajectory or the plateau, might be a better word to use at this point.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a plateau, first of all. And I think we have to even step back further than the Biden legislation from a few years ago and look at what's happened over the last decade in this industry. Really, it was truly a nascent industry, and looking back as far as 2010. And what has happened as policy is aligned, technology is proven out, and finance has really moved behind this industry. We've seen it grow, and the demand for the power that we produce is significant. So when major corporations like Walmart or the tech companies and others are signing long-term power arrangements for electricity today, they never did that 15 years ago, right? They just bought from the utility, but they're seeing better ways to budget their electricity. When you think about things like solar, right? The input to the solar, the sun, doesn't change. So you can really budget out your power over 20 years. Those economics have really proven themselves out. It's brought efficiency to our market. We've gotten better at being able to build these things and get them in the ground. And as a result, our market has really flourished. And unfortunately, we were at a really amazing point, literally at the beginning of this year, where we went, for instance, from 14th in the world in solar manufacturing to 3rd, because incentives behind things like the IRA were getting manufacturing built, by the way, in many Republican districts. The governor of Georgia is a great example of someone who took wild advantage of this and went to an area in Georgia where it was literally dying. It was like the carpet center of the world. It was dying for manufacturing, attracted major solar manufacturers. And now, we will be a net exporter of solar panels. We were at least on track to do that in the next 2 years, right? So those policies were working. This administration forecasted a year ago when Trump was in Houston and raised $1 billion from the fossil fuel, or it said to the fossil fuel executives, give me $1 billion, I'm going to save your industry. Put a fracking executive in charge of the Department of Energy, and now has been doing everything they can to slow the roll of what is in solar a $70 billion industry, right? So back to your question, we now have a new policy landscape to execute under, and from Clean Capital's perspective, we're looking at where and how we can invest and bring projects. Unfortunately, they've narrowed the scope of where we can go, but it doesn't mean we're not building projects. We just had a ribbon cutting yesterday here in Western New York, where we put solar on a brownfield that was at one point one of the most polluted parts of the entire country.
So what Trump will say is that, look, wind and solar is a scam. Energy should be something that you make money from, not something that you have to subsidize. So what is the counter argument to his claim there?
Well, first of all, they're wildly subsidized. Fossil fuels been subsidized for 100+ years. So the scam is actually the opposite, right? We have spent billions, if not trillions, in fossil fuel subsidies. So let's just start off with, let's have a level playing field. And we are bringing infrastructure capital to grow things like solar and storage. That was not done 10 years ago, right? It was a high risk market, but this is growing worldwide. I would hold up my cell phone out and tell you, this is where the world's going in terms of mobile phones. If we try to go back to the phone that was connected to the wall, because that's what the president wanted to do, all of us would be up in arms, right? That's the transition that's happening right now in energy. And the question is, do we want to be the world leaders in this? Or do we want to go back to trying to get things done in a way that, and often, Ryan, I heard you talk about in the data center show a while back, it takes 7 to 10 years to build things like a natural gas plant or a nuclear plant. The demand we have is growing super fast. The cheapest, fastest way to do it is renewables. And we can bring all of those electrons to the grid regardless. So let us compete and we'll win. But they're putting handcuffs on us. This BLM cancellation is a good example, right? They're looking at a project that has really taken probably hundreds of millions of dollars in investment ready to go, and they're cutting it off for purely political reasons. And that, unfortunately, is going to cost the electricity payers in that region significantly, because that new power isn't going to come online, and there's nothing to replace it in the near term.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about that, the handcuffs? So I think that is the best pushback to Trump, where he says, hey, no subsidies, everybody should have to compete. But taking a project that had hundreds of millions of dollars in investment and approvals, or taking these 233 contracts that were doled out and just canceling them, that doesn't sound like a level playing field to me. But what else? Not at all. What else in a regulatory framework is happening that is making it not just that you're on a level playing field, but it's actively handicapping you against the fossil fuel industry?
It's that uncertainty, right? And when we think about the way you invest in anything, whether it be renewable energy or a new technology or building real estate, right? The less uncertainty, the more capital will flow to that market. They've entered uncertainty around the tax credits, around how you're going to look at something called FIAC, which is like where you're getting, it's a very in the weeds thing in the policy, but it's, whether or not we can get any part of a system from China, right? American manufacturing has ramped up significantly, but still within the supply chain, there's still bits that come from China. So how do we address that? And if you're going to put that handicap on us, let's also put it on the fossil fuel industry. Good luck building a natural gas plant today that no bit of that natural gas plant comes from China, right? Those are the type of handicaps that they're trying to implement. And the Secretary of Energy knows what he's doing, right? He is an extremist who's come in to try to handicap this industry, and he's doing everything he can to do so.
One thing I've heard often from people in the solar industry, and I'm curious if you can elaborate on this a bit, is that the technology advancements in the technology would surprise most people if they realize kind of the potential. And it's actually, I say this as somebody on the right who likes the idea of solar because it gets you off the grid, right? Like you can, if you have your own solar capabilities, there's just, there's something independent about that if you're able to run your home on solar or something like that. But one of the things that I hear a lot is this is like leaps and bounds. Like when we're looking to the immediate future of solar, it's really, really promising in ways that maybe people don't recognize. Could you tell us a little bit about whether that's true?
Yeah. So first on the technology piece, and I want to get to the political piece in a second because you raise a really interesting point. So on the technology piece, leaps and bounds forward. For instance, we built solar in Alaska, right? Recently. If you would ask me when we started this company 10 years ago if that was possible, no way. Right. But now, for instance, the panels can not just take the sun from the top, but they take it as is reflected from the bottom, really driving up efficiency. Energy storage has come such a long way and is being implemented across the grid and will really be a key piece of stabilizing the grid. Just in the last few years, that technology has accelerated to a point that it's being, there's almost a lack of batteries right now because so many people need it to help stabilize the grid. But back to the political piece for a second. This should not be a Republican and Democratic issue. I think one of the things that gets lost in the big, beautiful bill debate this summer. 22 House Republicans signed a letter saying, don't touch the tax credits. We need them. If this was a standalone energy bill, that would not have passed, right? The genius of the administration, I'll give them credit for this, was flooding the zone with SALT, right? The state taxes, Medicaid, putting these folks in an uncomfortable position to decide how they're going to vote. We have to continue to build support on both sides, obviously, in the Republican side more right now, to continue to show that this technology is proven. Texas is the fastest growing solar state in the nation. Why is it the fastest growing solar state in the nation? 2 years ago, Popa froze to death because the grid was unstable, right? Recently, the head of the national group that manages the grid's reliability said it's because of solar and storage that Texas's grid is back to being stable, right? Those are the leaders that we should be listening to in this debate, not some of the extremists that are pushing sort of anti-renewable policies instead of all the above policies and pragmatic energy policies that will move us forward.
And so the bottom line seems to be that if you want to build nuclear or natural gas turbines, natural gas, you're looking at seven years. Nuclear, right, you'd be extremely lucky, but given our track record, to get something online within 7 years. Totally. But let's even say it's that. Whereas wind and solar, we're talking what? How long to get from like starting to like get it up?
Yeah, 18 months to 2 years. I mean, it's for distributed solar, big utility projects like the one that got canceled, sometimes could take 4+ depending on transmission, but it's much quicker. And it's really a local game at that point on how to get it interconnected and where. You know, the transition that's happening to the grid is we're going from these massive centralized systems that provided power and it was distributed across the country to a much more distributed type of production. So we can move quicker, get those things plugged in closer to the end use of the power, right? That transition has been underway for about 15 or 20 years. Unfortunately, these guys are slowing that transition by trying to go back to that centralized system, which has proven unstable, right? We want stability. We need to move from, again, we're moving to this, right? From the telecom age of Ma Bell, right? And we have to continue that transition because the rest of the world is. And if we don't, we're going to be left behind.
And so correct me if I'm wrong, the way that you end up getting your electric bill is a product of supply and demand, where the utility gauges what the supply is that they have now and what they forecast will be the supply in the future against the demand that they have now and the demand that they expect in the future. And then they go to their regulators and they say, here's what we need to charge to make this work. So the supply, the only way to bring new supply on and with any quickness seems to be to rely on these clean energy technologies because they can move faster. On the demand side, we seem to be building, data centers, everywhere all the time, and so the demand is going through the roof. So tell me about because you mentioned the tax credits. My understanding was that in the IRA, tax credits went something like 20, 30 years. Because these, as you mentioned, these projects take so long to get on, and if you're going to make a multi-billion-dollar investment, this is something you care about for decades or maybe 15, 20 years. Whereas the one big beautiful bill cut those credits, and they cut off at what, 2030 or something like that. So how does that play in?
Yeah. So first of all, in the utility question, you were right. It's a supply and demand issue, and right now, demand is far outstripping supply. That's why utilities are having to ask for rate hikes. As you mentioned in a previous episode, the data centers are driving that. And we need every type of supply we can to counteract that. If we wait 7 years for a natural gas plant, everyone's going to be electricity bills are a top political issue today. You're seeing it in New Jersey, the governor's race. It is going to be the egg prices of the midterms, right? And the Trump administration knows that. That's why they're out blaming us when that's not the reality. But going back to your previous question on the tax credits, this is one of the things. I was very active on Capitol Hill this spring because there's a lack of understanding of finance in the policy making realm in Washington, right? The tax credits are something that are, as we build a project today, we can go to a taxpayer and they can get a credit to invest that money into this type of project. They could also do it for low-income housing and other things, right? This is a tool that's been used for decades to incentivize certain type of growth, right? What happens is, though, when we're building projects, when we're looking out to, it takes us 2 years to get something built, but we're financing it today, right? So we are looking at it when that tax credit cliff comes, because it highly affects the type of capital we're putting into a project. The reality is, the reason those tax credits were put in is because it helps keep the price of electrons lower on the backside. So it's like, how much does it cost to build equals how much you're paying for the power, right? We're now raising the price to build. It's going to raise the price for people are going to pay for electricity. The efficiency our market is getting, though, is helping to negate some of that, which is exciting. But the reality is, it's still an issue for projects really 26 and beyond. And we are trying to figure out today, what does that look like, and how are we going to sort of build and finance? And the reality is where we're going to build and finance, because the question is, where is it going to work?
Great. Well, John Powers, great last name, by the way.
Nominal
CEO of
determinism.
Clean Capital
Yeah.
Energy. Yeah. Thanks for walking us through this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show. Help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
So we are just over a week out from this New York City mayoral race, which is looking like a fait accompli at this point. But Zoran held a big sort of culminating rally last night. I know Ryan had a reporter on the ground. Our own Griffin was there in the crowd as well. AOC was there. Bernie was there. And actually, Kathy Hochul, and it's kind of interesting. This will get into some of the dynamics. You guys can go ahead and put this slideshow up on the screen while I'm talking. You could see, I mean, massive crowd, people waiting outside. I think people got turned away. It was, really high energy and pretty electric from the folks that were there on the ground. And you can feel that just from watching the videos as well.
Looking at the pictures, I mean, this is just packed.
Yes, and it was a beautiful fall night, and they got great weather and all of that kind of good stuff. There you got Stavros and you got Bernie and Zoran there. Quite a picture. That's quite a moment. Quite a moment in time. I'd love to be privy to that conversation.
The boys.
Yeah, exactly. But in any case, you bringing together Bernie, AOC, and Kathy Hochul for Zoran is interesting, because Hochul is like a moderate. She's like standard issue Democrat. She's tried to govern as a moderate. She has opposed, so Zoran wants to raise taxes on the rich to fund his proposals, specifically his proposal for free childcare, which is, of the things that he's proposed, that's the biggest one to be able to pull off in terms of the various programs that he's put forward. And she has said in the past that she was opposed to it. So let's take a listen to this. This is the crowd chanting at Kathy Hochul to tax the rich, and her having to deal with that in real time and respond to it, and almost losing control of the crowd at one moment. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
I can hear you. Flooding our streets as we speak. You have the power! You have the power! They're everywhere, and they're terrorizing innocent people. And we get had enough.
So they're yelling at her there, do something, when she's talking about, ISIS abuses of power, et cetera. And I think it's pretty significant shift for this moderate establishment Democrat to feel the heat from the, I'm not even going to say the left of the party, because this man is the Democratic nominee. He won overwhelmingly. This is just the base of the party that is like, we are going to hold you to account, and we understand where you're falling short, and we're going to yell at you to your face even at this rally. At the very end, Zoran came out like a little bit early to get the crowd sort of back in line and put his arm around her and give her some support, because she's there obviously to support him. But the fact that you have these figures all coming together now behind Zoran and him really kind of running the show and putting pressure on the sitting governor to back his policies is quite an extraordinary moment.
Yeah, and I'm beating this dead horse, but it just does remind me so much of the years between like 2010 and 2015. Actually, there's almost something Trumpian about it when Ted Cruz was railing against Donald Trump and then, 2 months later, campaigning with a smile on his face next to Donald Trump. It has that feel to it. Or, when everybody was raging against Sarah Palin, and then Sarah Palin was the hottest ticket in the Republican Party. Like, that was the best way to get an endorsement. Circa like 2012 was from Sarah Palin. And so you had all of the establishment figures sort of gritting their teeth and smiling in photo ops with the Sarah Palins or the Ted Cruzes at a certain point. So it has that feel to it, and it just reminds me of that poll from over the summer that found Democratic voters' satisfaction with their own party is super similar to what Republican voters' favorability of their own party was during the Tea Party years. When you hear, because I think one of the things about that chant is, and this gets to the appeal of Zoran, is that, and we'll talk about this later, I think, but he's always got a smile on his face. He's not a sort of dour socialist, right? Like, he's a happy populist, which is a hard thing to do. It's not an easy thing to pull off because you're talking about people's immiseration and corruption, and doing it with a smile on the face makes a big difference. But that crowd was really angry. You could kind of hear it in the chant. That crowd was angry at Kathy Hochul. Really, really angry, which is why she sort of had to say, I hear you. It's like when your mom is driving and you're like, I want lunch. Like, give me, like, pull over. Like, when are we going to eat? She's like, I hear you. I hear you.
We're getting
That's what that was.
Just get a little bit further down the road.
That's what that was.
Yeah, well, and so that's why, first of all, the margin of his victory is going to be closely watched. I think people are looking at, okay, does he get over 50%? Right, because if he wins over 50%, then there's no cope around like, oh, we could have had the majority position was anti-Zoran, and so if we just had a different, better candidate, not Andrew Cuomo, maybe we would have won, right? If he gets under 50%, there will be a lot of that cope, for sure. The majority of New Yorkers voted against Zoran. So that's number one. Number two, though, I firmly believe his power is only likely to grow because we know a confrontation is coming with Trump. And we know New Yorkers are going to hate it, right? They already don't like Trump. They are going to hate the specter. We've already had some of these raids of these, masked up, military outfitted federal agents in their streets, rampaging, the sort of scenes we've seen in Chicago. New Yorkers are going to absolutely revolt. It's a city that really takes its immigrant character seriously and truly has been built on these various waves of immigration. But even just beside that, it's a very proud city. Like, what are you doing infringing on our territory? And I fully expect, based on what I've seen from Zoran thus far, that he's going to meet that moment very effectively. I've yet to see him fail or fumble an important moment in his campaign, whether it's on the debate stage or in important interviews, et cetera. And so I think he's going to end up even more of he's already kind of, this burgeoning rock star in the Democratic Party and our national politics. I think that is probably going to become even more the case. And so I saw Elon Musk tweeted this is the future of the Democratic Party, as if that's a negative thing. And I'm like, yeah, I hope that it is. I think let's have the contest. Right? Rather than doing this, lame Kathy Hochul, Andrew Cuomo, Joe Biden style of politics, let's embrace the new young wave of left populism, and unapologetically so, and see how people respond to it. Because thus far, what we see is Bernie Sanders, the most popular politician in the country. Zoran is an up-and-coming rock star in the country. You've got Graham Platter, in spite of all of his things, coming out of nowhere to challenge a sitting governor of Maine. And if 2 out of the 3 of the polls are to be believed, winning that showdown thus far. So maybe this is the new direction of the Democratic Party. And if so, I think it has a lot more promise, certainly, than the old direction. Emblematic, of course, of that version of the Democratic Party is AOC, who was there last night and gave a barn burner of a speech. Let's take a listen to one of her highlights.
City was built by the Irish escaping famine, Italians fleeing fascism, Jews escaping Holocaust, Black Americans fleeing slavery and Jim Crow, Latinos seeking a better life, Native people standing for themselves, Asian Americans coming together in Queens, in Brooklyn, in the Bronx, in Manhattan,
crowd obviously roaring, and I think this will fit together with the next piece that we're going to do on Zoran, all this like Islamophobic bullshit, calling him a jihadist, etc. But what she is laying out there is the pluralistic vision of America, which is direct contrast to the increasingly like blood and soil nationalist vision of America that's being asserted, not just by the Trump administration, but increasingly by like right-wing influencers who are being quite overt at this point that like, white people built this country. It's a country for white people. If you aren't white, you come under suspicion. If you weren't born here or your family hasn't been here for multi-generations, we can denaturalize you. You aren't a true American. Really rewriting the conception of, you know, how people have thought about America for a number of years at this point, and a theme of, you know, how people have thought about America from the beginning. Not that there's always been, you know, complete alignment in that view. But so what AOC is laying out there, I think, is a very important contrast in the vision for what the country is and what it means vis-a-vis the vision that's being asserted and trying to be made reality by this administration right now.
For Democrats and Democratic Socialists, there's quite a lesson to be taken from what happened during Trump 1.0 and then Biden, because backlash in polling to Trump's immigration policies inspired a fairly dramatic, what's the right word, like liberalization of the Democratic Party's immigration policies. And this is where like Zoran's really going to have to sell, because in New York City, there was a lot of backlash to the Biden immigration policies, which is why Eric Adams sort of changed his own tune on it. And the asylum policies, all of that, like the hotels, this was, you know, there was significant backlash in New York City. And so that means if Zoran wants to, he's been talking about how he wants to make New York, or wants to keep New York as like a sort of prominent sanctuary city, as a great sanctuary city. I think that is you know, obviously I have deep political disagreements with that, but I really think that's going to be kind of interesting to watch, because he's a great political salesman. And if that's what Zoran Mamdani and AOC want, they do have to sort of come up with a different way to sell it, because what happened before didn't work.
Well, Trump is making that sales pitch for them right now.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, people say Chicago also a sanctuary city. And, you know, you see the scenes coming out of there of people just being harassed or even assaulted just because of the shade of their skin, based on absolutely no evidence that they're here illegally, let alone that they've committed any sort of crime. Obviously, the apartment raid, pulling all sorts of American citizens out on the street in their underwear in the middle of the night and arresting them, zip tying their kids, throwing U-Haul vans. All of these abuses are playing out. And, you know, I fully expect Trump to, you know, move on New York in the same fashion. So I think, you know, I think Trump is making the pitch for them of like, okay, so there was dissatisfaction over, you know, the immigrants were bussed in by and large by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and that creates, you know, this friction in the city of, okay, well, what do we do with this influx of people, and how do we handle them, and how do we, you know, integrate them into the city? And many of them don't have work permits, so they're like sort of inherently dependent on the government to provide for them, et cetera. So you had that, but then when you see the cost of this insane militarized crackdown, you know, I think certainly the New York City public is already going to be on board for sanctuary policy. We already see a backlash against the raids that they've done in the city thus far. The actions at the, you know, the courthouse downtown, where they're just immigrants who are coming in and are like doing the thing and going to the court dates like they're supposed to, are then getting swept up and detained, assaulted at times, et cetera. So, you know, I think that sort of sales pitch has already happened in an important sense. We can put E4 up on the screen. We do have some early voting results just in terms of the boroughs that are surging. So top line here is Brooklyn. People living in Brooklyn are voting their asses off. And that is Zoran's best borough.
Laid off Vice employees are coming in strong.
They are coming in strong. And then the second best borough for Zoran, judging by the primary, is Queens. And Queens is also voting at extraordinary levels. Next is Manhattan, then Staten Island, then the Bronx are the two lowest performing boroughs, and those are also Zoran's two lowest performing boroughs. So who knows? Maybe this is just the Sliwa surge. Could be, but it's looking like this turnout seems to indicate that Zoran is cleaning up. And it would not surprise me if he outperforms the polls again, because he did during the primary. He outperformed the polls by 12 points.
So off.
At least 12 to 15 points in the primary, because he changed the electorate. And so it would not be a shock if there was another polling underperformance, because he is a politician that brings out a different electorate than pollsters are really able to capture. Very Trump-like in that way, where it's predominantly young people, right, who normally pollsters discount, feel like, okay, they don't turn out that much. And this is a general election in a New York City mayor's race, where typically the general election is a foregone conclusion, and yet there's all this energy and interest around it, so that creates a totally different political landscape. So I would not be shocked at all if, Zoran, already the polls show him winning by anywhere from 10 to 20 points. I would not be shocked at all if he outperforms the average of the polls right now, too.
So I'm looking at this poll that producer Griffin flagged over the weekend, because it's just so funny, so rich, that Mamdani versus Sliwa is more competitive for Sliwa than Mamdani versus Cuomo. Sliwa, head-to-head with Zoran Mamdani, is doing better than Cuomo head-to-head with Zoran Mamdani.
I think it's by 1 point, but it's still amazing.
Yeah.
Because
it's 2 points, yeah.
Think of how contrary that is to all of the standard issue political logic that Cuomo's the guy, it has to be Cuomo. It's Cuomo versus Zoran, Cuomo could win. And it's actually all along, first of all, do you not understand how hated this guy is? Do you not understand how incredibly lame he is, and lazy, by the way, and what a bad campaign he's running? And you still think he's the guy where you want to send all of your millions and put all of your hopes into?
Yep. And he's at, so that poll actually had 8.5% of the electorate undecided, which is, that's a pretty significant chunk of the electorate if that poll is correct. Now, again, to Crystal's point, polling in New York City races can be really difficult. So we'll see where it ends up going, but that is, for Cuomo, I mean, the primary should have been enough to embarrass him out of politics, out of public life.
Truly.
Because of the situation that he put Democrats in by running and trying to consolidate all of the money and then losing to a 33-year-old Democratic Socialist state senator. And yet he persisted. Nevertheless, he persisted.
Indeed.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show. Help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com. We've talked a lot here on the show about inflation, about tariffs, and what the overall effect will be. But one of the things that we may have discounted is greedflation. You will remember there was a huge debate about the sources of inflation back in the day from 2021 onwards as to whether it was corporations raising prices, input prices going up. It turned out to be a part of both. But part of the reason why the stock market actually did quite well during the Biden years, despite horrible inflation, was that corporate profits were able to be maintained. How do you do that exactly? Well, you eat some of the cost, but you pass some of it on also to the consumer. And so we are seeing some of that with tariffs as well. Let's take a listen to this report from CNBC.
I don't quite understand why the government is saying that profit margins increased when we're not seeing essentially a lot of inflation in the consumer prices, but we're seeing prices higher on the wholesale prices. That should compress margins, and we've had a whole bunch of companies come on and say, we're taking big hits because of these tariffs. So this number should be going the other way. I'm not sure what's happening here.
I'm actually not surprised that we didn't see compression of corporate profits. That's something that's characterized the inflationary period since the beginning of the pandemic, that corporations are actually able to protect their profit margins and actually even increase their profit margins at times, using inflation and uncertainty as cover for price hikes, even if their costs aren't going up. And so one of the things we're going to be looking for in the CPI as consumer prices are starting to rise is, are corporations actually taking hits, or are they able to use this moment of supply constraint created by tariffs and uncertainty created by the Trump administration to pass on higher prices even above their increased costs?
All right, so there it is, straight from CNBC. You know they were killing themselves for that one because they hated greedflation narratives back in 2021 and 2022. But what it does generally fit with the pattern of is that the companies are broadly okay right now. And, you know, that's one of the things I've emphasized about this tariff policy. If the tariffs were working, then the S&P should be down by 20%. Because if a company had to actually increase its costs, CapEx costs here in the US, why would their stock go up? You know, it'd be like, okay, well, we have to massively eat all of this new policy. The only way to offset that would be a shit ton of federal dollars or a tax break. Not happening because I can read what the tax code is. And that's why the S&P 500 is doing pretty well. Now, one of the ways that they're doing well is basically this like weird pay-for-play system inside of the White House. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. The West Wing has now apparently created a loyalty scorecard for 553 companies and trade associations on how hard they work to support and promote President Trump. So Trump, currently the unusual spreadsheet fits the administration's proclivity for micromanaging and administering loyalty tests. Factors in the rating include social media posts, press releases, video testimonials, ads attendance at the White House, and other engagement related to OB3, the One Big Beautiful Bill. The organization's support is then ranked as strong, moderate, or low. Examples of good partners include Uber, DoorDash, United, Delta, AT&T, Cisco, Airlines for America, and the Steel Manufacturers Association. Apparently, other companies, you know, have not, you know, been able to rate on the list. One of the ways that you do is to cheer on things like no tax on tips if you're Uber or being a DoorDash person who is promoting some of the policy. But this gets to the heart of that NVIDIA deal. I think I covered it with Emily, which is still so crazy. It's like, yeah, you can do business in China, but you have to literally pay us a cut of the profit. Nothing to do with strategy, nothing to do with anything. And again, there are plenty of good arguments for letting NVIDIA send the H20. I went through all of them during the segment.
Yeah.
Us getting a, quote, cut of it is not on the list, you know, of what that is.
Yeah.
And now apparently we're doing the same thing with Intel, which, by the way, is a U.S. company, which is even crazier because it's not even about that.
Put C3
it's the same
up on
thing.
the screen about this.
C3, please, from Intel, considering, quote, buying a stake in Intel. I am not even fundamentally opposed to sovereign wealth funds. I don't think they're always a bad idea as long as they're actually, you know, done properly,
right,
or any of that. That's not what's happening here.
That's right.
And that's the opposition that I have to so much of this. If we want to have a full-on strategy the way that China does it, where they have stakes and they control things for the overall national interest, which is actually benefiting the people and has a track record, I'm all in, okay? But this is not what we're seeing right now, which is basically like some loyalty, fealty thing to Donald Trump, you know, so he can get a solid bar of gold, in the, which I'm still not over that. In the
Nor
Oval
should
Office.
You be. We should never be over that.
It's pretty wild. Here's your, you know,
Here's
literally.
your tribute, sir.
Yeah, it's like, you know, when Amazon explorers would go into the jungle, they would come with beads and other things to exchange for goods. It's like, that's how primitive that is to present the leader with a bar of gold to the chieftain.
That's why the loyalty score story and the Intel stake story tied together so importantly, because it would be one thing if, if you were pursuing something like, you know, a China policy, which is very long-term driven and very much in the interest of, hey, what do we want life to be like in China for Chinese? What do we want to invest in? What are the industries of the future? Like this very intentional strategy that instead, what we have here is just, did you tweet about the One Big Beautiful Bill? You know, did you show up with your bar of gold at the White House? Like, how slavish and devoted have you been to the person of Donald Trump? Oh, okay, then we're gonna look upon you favorably, and if not, then not. So all of these, like, all of this involvement in the economy, which, yes, if done in a different way, I would support too. And in fact, I'm hoping that some, you know, candidate on the left picks up this road that has been mapped up by Trump, and does it in an actually intelligent way to actually, benefit the manufacturing economy here and benefit, jobs and wages and all those sorts of things, and invest in critical industries and industries of the future. But no, this is not that. This is about just, what's going to be good for Trump, who paid the best tribute, who had the best gold bars in the Oval Office. The DoorDash example they had a delivery driver who wore a red DoorDash mom t-shirt as she stood behind Trump at a White House event promoting no tax on tips, also in a Fox News digital interview. And that's what earned them their great loyalty score. And now they'll be able to reap the benefits of that. It's also why Wall Street hasn't been that upset about the tariffs, because they know that they have the money to be able to get in those rooms, and they know how to, work his ego, massage his ego, and be able to get whatever they want.
I actually read a fascinating analysis, which is that economists have undercounted the actual tariff. Part of the reason why, people are shocked right now about the S&P and everything is because the official tariff rate is like 15% or whatever on average. But what this piece dug into is that economists took the government too literally, as in they took it for what it is and thought it was being applied across the board. That's not what actually they're paying. If you look at the corporate profit and the reported costs of tariffs, it doesn't line up with the government figures. And the actual tariff rate is much lower, indicating a ton of exclusions which are not public, which it turns out that the Fortune 500 is probably paying about half of what the government actually says they are paying. And that is the only thing that you can possibly reconcile the profit numbers and where things are today, the lack of effect, and then the government published number. There's no other way to do it. And it was a long, more economic analysis, but translating it to others is basically saying what they say they're charging is not what they actually are, because there's all these corporate exclusions that are being cut at the Fortune 500 level that you and I know nothing about, but this is all deeply legalistic, it's all with the Commerce Department, et cetera. But it results in the fact that the tariff being paid are actually much lower than they say. So it makes, that's, again, in terms
and they're
of the
probably
cronyism.
using this loyalty
That's
score
what I'm
to
saying.
determine who gets the carve-outs.
Right, and that's why I think it's very important, for actually understanding some of this. And that actually gets to the Scott Besson point with a very extraordinary comment about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Let's take a listen.
We have these agreements in place where the Japanese, the Koreans, and to some extent the Europeans will invest in companies and industries that we direct them largely at the president's discretion.
And how's that work? I mean, it's almost like an offshore appropriation. I'm not sure we've ever had anything like that in the States before. Have you consulted with the Senate Finance Committee or the House Ways and Means Committee, or what?
Well, Larry, I think a good framing of that is other countries, in essence, are providing us with a sovereign wealth fund.
They're going to build our factories. They're going to help us to build new factories, which Mr. Trump loves.
Exactly. So the way to think about it is these huge surpluses accumulated offshore. Let's take Japan. We're going to have $550 billion, and they will be reinvesting that back into the U.S. economy, and we will be able to direct them as we reshore these critical industries.
Okay, so translating that a little bit, and our friend Arnaud, put it this way, quote, "This is, without exaggerating, one of the most extraordinary things the Treasury Secretary has said." He says, "What he is saying is that the U.S. will now treat U.S. allies' wealth as an American sovereign wealth fund and direct them at the president's discretion how to use their money in order to build American factories and reshore American industries." As even Larry Kudlow says, he's like, what? He's like, have you run this by the Senate?
Yeah.
Or any of that? I mean, Arnaud and I probably have more of a difference, but because I think, in terms of our trading relationship or other, I don't really see the point of being an empire if you're not going to, tell your imperial outposts how exactly to pay their tribute. I would say that's part of the problem with the global American empire right now in terms of who's benefiting from it or not. But the overall problem I really have with the way that this is all being done is that it's stupid and it's not really to the benefit of anyone. Because if you take like the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, or frankly, even the Saudi one, or many of these others, they have been been to the tremendous benefit of their actual countries and of the people who participate. There's a lot of democratic input. I'm not sure if you saw it. They just divested from Israel as well more recently, which was a huge deal just because it's one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. But the point is that it's being actually used and has a lot of democratic input by the people because they see it as a way not only to ensure their own security, their financial status, et cetera, but part of the problem for the country. We have not had any of that get put on the table. It's being used entirely by the administration and setting a precedent where, you know, if you think about it in the future, if you can just have this discretionary funding completely available, then President Biden or President Newsom or whoever is going to come next can also use it to their end, which of course people would freak out about, you know, by saying that these are the public dollars within the government treasury. That's what I would say is you're setting it up in such a capricious and a stupid way, not only setting a bad standard going forward, but you're not even accomplishing what you allegedly set out to do.
Yeah, no scrutiny, no accountability, and we know the way that Donald Trump operates. It's all about, you know, what's going to be good for him and his bottom line. So, you know, don't be surprised if that wealth that's supposed to build American factories is going to his shitcoin or whatever, Trump hotels or some sort of deal that, you know, benefits him, or just the, you know, to whatever CEO happens to be the most like embarrassing and willing to humiliate themselves and grovel at his feet. So that will be the criteria by which those investments are judged. At the same time, you know, we've got a few different indicators of, you know, economic turmoil. We can put this up on the screen. They say the jaws of stagflation are wide open. This is from Bloomberg. You've got employment shrinking. You've got prices paid rising. So, you know, what stagflation is when you have low growth or no growth or negative growth, and you have inflation. And the reason why this is such a terrible thing to happen, I mean, first of all, it just causes a lot of pain. Second of all, it's very difficult to deal with because if you are trying to control the economy using the Fed, and you hike interest rates to get the inflation under control, well, then you're going to further crush growth. If you lower interest rates to help to, you know, trigger growth and deal with unemployment, well, then you're going to get inflation. So that's why stagflation is such an incredible concern. And we can put the next piece up on the screen as well from Joe Weisenthal. We just got new consumer sentiment numbers, overall sentiment down, inflation expectations much higher. This comes from University of Michigan. I think this is kind of the preeminent consumer sentiment index, and it's fallen to 58.6 when it was estimated at 62, and long-term inflation expectations rising to 3.9% when they had been estimated at 3.4%. So, and it turns out, Sagar, the public is paying attention to how they're feeling economically and to some of the legislation that has been passed by this administration. This is extraordinary. Put this next chart up on the screen, C7. Trump's support with people who are on Medicaid, and of course Medicaid, you know, significantly cut by the quote-unquote one big beautiful bill, has gone from being quite positive to quite negative. So you can see if you track this at the beginning of Trump's term, 52% of those on Medicaid approved of Trump. So he was above water, 52%, and only 34% disapproved. Now it's completely reversed. Now you have 55% of those on Medicaid who disapprove and 36% who approve. This person tweets his support is down 37 points among those who are on Medicaid since his first week in office. So as Steve Bannon famously said, a lot of MAGA on Medicaid, Sagar.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, you know, look, we're going to find out some of this stuff. There were a lot of contraindications going into 2022 and more. I'm really just desperate for the 2026 midterm data to see who overperforms and who doesn't come out to vote, overall Republican support, and if there are any hidden surprises. Because Medicaid right now is the number one thing that you would put your money on for the backlash. Similar to 2018, there was a lot of, you know, crediting of the resistance and stuff in 2018 for the midterms. I guess I wouldn't downplay that, but it really wasn't the driving force. If you talk to many of the Republican candidates, they all said, my vote to repeal Obamacare is what nuked me, right? That was like the story of the 2018 midterms for a lot of the anti-Trump backlash. It kind of came together. And a lot of the Republican senators, what was her name? McSally? I think that's what it was, down in Arizona.
Yeah.
She was like, me voting on Obamacare. She's like, that's it. Killed me. She lost by 13 points.
That's right.
It was a
She did say
disaster.
that.
So my point is just that broadly, this could be the sleeper issue.
I think it is.
I think so too. I'd be willing to bet, just given some of the previous just the way that things went with 2018 and with more, I'm still not quite sure. I guess I could, what would it take for Trump and the Republicans to declare victory? It'd probably be keeping the House, which, the gerrymandering and all that doesn't help. But the actual demographic data on this and the extent to which people are either demoralized or not enthusiastic to come out to vote is going to be a very important story. The Medicaid thing is the number one thing to watch.
The fact they're doing this whole thing with the maps and the census and
Right.
whatever tells you they think they're.
No, they're worried. Of course.
They're trying to rig it as best they can to try to prevent massive losses. Because listen, I mean, if Democrats have the House, the Senate is a longer shot. But if they have the House, there are things they can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will have subpoena power. It will be the end of of a lot of what's going on in the Trump presidency. Although Trump has done a lot with just executive power without even using Congress. That's been most of what he's done. But I think they're worried about scrutiny over things like the Epstein files. They're worried about scrutiny over all these masked ICE agents and other federal agents that, who have their identities completely shielded. I think there are a lot of questions, too, to be revealed about what exactly is going on there and who is doing what within some of these various agencies. So I think they are concerned about that, and that's why they're pulling the fire alarm.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
We are back, and we are joined now by David Sirota, a friend of the show, founder of The Lever, a former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders, and co-author of the new book, which he co-wrote with Jared Jakang Mayer, Master Plan, The Hidden Plot to Legalize Corruption in America. David, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Okay, so what happened? Well, that's kind of strange. The Vans Carlupia.